your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the Basosphere condenser came along,
3-4
distilling concentrated fear.
3-4 Reef, what it does, buddy?
Crystal clear, oppressor strong and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear.
Video settings.
And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the
I can like,
begging
okay,
for the
so
muzzle,
let's do...
happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere. Where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink them twice. Welcome to your ecosphere. Of the free, and you'll know us by the trail of dead. It's just one more world war to complete the set. When you live by the pike, you die by the pith. You die wide-eyed, still pleading the fifth, or crying divine epithets and pathetic attempts at defense. All empathetic for those on your side of the fence. Well, I'll gladly put you and your legacy into an alternate tense of faltering senses and altered events. Like hun, it ain't a hearse, it's a reaper's stretch. How sweet, she said, bunch of hordes in the street like it's Evil Dead. Where the thin blue line meets razor's edge, and where the corporate ladder ascends to a steel-toed boot that awaits on the ledge. You'll be licking it fresh at your boss's request till it stomps each finger and watches you fall to your death and drown in an ocean of debt. Gone with the fodder who gathered to honor the patient left, who purity tested themselves into sections, step by step, till the next election, when it's just one them and the sound of their well-read theorized breath. That's harm reduction for the lowly cost of you holding your nose and just openly buying the theft. Maybe that's all in the flick of the pen. Maybe we're all one unmarked van from a trip to the pen, being guarded by pigs who exist on a diet of dying breaths of much worthier men. Honey, heaven's expecting you. Just don't get too hung up on who they let in. Just look up at the shine of the pearly gates. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the paint. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the water, lead in the milk, lead in the honey, lead in the caustic embrace of the Heavenly Father. Lead is the flavor of passive perpetual slaughter. Lead is the taste of us led to the ledge by the lure of the legend of expert consensus, and then beckon to stretch it just one step farther. And I hope all the folks who were boastfully gloating and toasting themselves as the heroes of COVID for boosting their boosters and doing their part are now equally thrilled to be starstruck martyrs, all laid in a government grave with anonymous markers, like you're back from the carvers and off to the splicer. You're the very first wave to be slain in the war against Pfizer, that 100 years war against Pfizer. They are thinning the crowd that is striking right now to bleed adequate pay from those inhuman misers who who all sit in their office and designate coffins to people regarded as nothing but profit for Kaiser. Still the Dems want you nicer. Dems want you softer, Dems want you kinder. Yeah, they all want you graciously starving in silence. You will speak when you're spoken to. Rest of the time, you and all of us peasants are merely depressing statistics neglected in Congress's binders. All bled, bone dry, then fed to the grinder. Our headstones line each step as reminders. That's a lesson in object permanence learned in the furnace by workers consigned to the fire. Workers bled, bone dry, then fed by the fed to the grinder. Fed by the fed to the grinder. Now the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Now the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. And the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, bleeds you dry, then dines on the dead. The Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. The Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your mind, that it grinds yourself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Here's where our leaders would see us all led.
That's how it goes. We won't open our eyes, so we're the last ones to know. We're the last ones alive. Kept our enemies close. Wondered why we don't thrive while we're grasping at ghosts. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5.
Count back from 5. The theater on fire, the cast on strike. The studio stock starts taking a dive. The contracts tossed and they're gone with the tide. And the heads and execs, their hands are tied. We can't pump this dreck and treat you right. But what do you expect from the industry type who survive by the leeching of bodies and minds? From those who original thoughts never seem to find. So they're gonna reboot ALF before your wages rise. And it gives cause to pause and reflect on the times. If they're losing control of their fools and their mimes, when all those obedient actors who grew their careers by averting their eyes are now holding the line, along with the authors of countless scripts that strengthen the hand of that corporate grip, squeezing our throats till we take the pen and we accept and consent to the corporate drip. Till you're all up to date on your pharma du jour, till you got a healthy support for the war on your lips. And now you know that the advertisers need more than a rerun summer full of flashback clips. Enter the scans from the year before, all the days of de-aging and mapping the face, and the hours of actors recording their voices are links in the chains that will bind them in place. Now all of those shows are so easy to make. When they got a drone they control that needs no break, it can bend, it can break, and it's cheaply replaced enough up-to-date films all in one take. And those studios bank on us doing our duty, unhinging our jaws and digesting the fakes. Because they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own, something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Cause it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment.
Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards.
People, you don't think I see you crying in your cars, but I do. Sometimes I can feel it at a red light, someone at my side trying to muddle through. See them wiping their eyes in the rear view, like black hole sun in the sky. Why the fuck won't you come when I need you? Well, this moment in time is as close as we'll be and as far as I'll meet you. 2 windows in between us, new moon in the house of Venus. One stranger who sees you and reads your features knows that your alibi might be tight, but it's not quite leak proof. So if you're sitting at the light and you're crying in your car, just know that I see you. And it's a 50-50 that I'm bloodshot, gun shy, once bitten, twice tried, ribs pried wide to the sky till I'm see-through.
That's you, in case you don't recognize yourself.
You don't think I see you struggling to breathe, but I do. I see you stumble in your everyday grief like I do. I try, but I do. I'm twice bitten too. My mind's split in two. My knuckles bright white from the 10 to the 2. And the song in my head is the theme for a fugue, a state of decay through the filter of corporate news, where they edit the grays and the blues. They whitewash the brown till they drown out the natural hues. And then it's just another fact to refuse, that the corporate ladders for hanging the company noose. Consider it one of your perks, after all it's communal in use. So you can come and hang till your legs go limp and they're shaking you loose. Now you watch 5 co-workers opt for the alternate exit, neatly suspended above where you wolf down your food. And your company gets its incentives embellished by harping on wellness, suggesting you'd best take time for your mental health after your 14 hours are through. Like we gave you a bottle to piss in and fixed up a noose on the crossbeam. Christ, what more can we do? So if you struggle to breathe any moment that you aren't asleep, then remember, most of Americans fear for their savings, fear for their shelter, fear for their babies. You aren't the fringe of exception, but rather a perfect example of capital's rule. And you're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. You're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. I see you crying in your cars, but I do.
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? Now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. Why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen?
What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? Man, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause, now that I can see the cause so clearly. I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me. I will pick my targets and assassinate them lyrically. I will bring a mountain to the town square, hook them to the pillory and leave them there. Hillary, I'll see you there. Hillary, I'll see you there.
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? Now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. Why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen?
Welcome to the fantasy of rhetoric. Welcome to the last of the free speech while we can get it. And I promise you can get it. All you corporate Democrats, second wave Confederates, GOP illusionists, and neo-Nazi bureaucrats. And Stephen fucking Miller, I will see you in the aftermath. When all the laws are dust, there's just moral justice after that. And I will hunt you through the wasteland if it comes to that. So I can rub you in the dirt like a cheap human Brillo pad. I can sleep fine when our beds are burning, Stephen, but I'll turn around and run into the blaze to get my pillow back. As long as I can lay my head down, I can live with that. I can deal with a little ash. I can feel like a little of the old me burn with the bed and the rest of my past. The old world where we all lived and we can't get back. The old world where you didn't give and you'd still get back. Where you could rake in 12 billion and give none back. Those days are behind us, the virus will kill all that. Your wealth is behind us and kindness is meant for the past. Our leaders would bind us and starve us and call it a fast. A sacrament meant for their God that they garnish in cash. And they feed it the poor by the hundreds, that's all that it asks. Its hunger is legion and people in need are all it will have. So our only chance is to starve it and hope that it turns on them.
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads.
You were told to come alone. Joe said if you vote for him, he'll abdicate his throne as the father of the crime bill, soul of Jim Crow. Proud to live and vote as a Strom Thurmond clone. If he tried to kiss your daughter with a camera rolling, he'll try more than kissing her alone. Cozy up with Jill for a photo like a portrait of the Kissingers at home. You know, I hate to kill the messenger, but if he's gotta go...
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Have peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
liberation is the answer. Liberation.
News.
It is Wednesday, my dude.
What up, dudes? It's another episode of INN News with me, Reef Freeland. My co-host, as always, Collin Radix Carter, aka Care Bear. Care Bear, how are you? You doing all right?
Happy New Year.
Yep. Exactly. We have a guest this evening. You brought some people along.
Yeah. We've been waiting for him for a while, but considering how can we start 2026 and already the fuckery is afoot?
The fuckery? Dude.
But I think given what's been happening, and we've been trying to connect with our guest for a while. He's been wanting to come on for a while, but he was traveling, and considering the circumstances, what a great time to have him on that we're able to jive a little bit. So I don't think, those of you who have been here for a while, we don't need to give this guy an introduction, really. But for our new friends who may have joined us within the last year, want to introduce solid friend to the network, DJ, activist, dad, humanitarian, healthcare expert,
Multinational citizen,
multinational,
world traveler.
Big brother in a lot of ways because very similar backgrounds.
Yep, absolutely.
And knows a lot more than me in a lot of ways.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
But welcome back to the show for the fourth.
I think it's the fourth time. Yeah, fourth time. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So, DJ Joe Nice.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Once again, how are
Thanks,
you?
guys. Man, I'm cool, man. Everything's good. Hope you guys are good. Out to everybody in the chat right now watching on YouTube. I know we've got a bunch of people on various platforms that are interested in what we have to say tonight because of our varied expertises. If that's even a word. And everything that we're going to talk about tonight. We got a lot on the menu. We had some latest new additions to the menu as a result of, or really the schedule or itinerary as a result of events that took place today, unfortunately, in Minneapolis. Yeah, we're gonna have a nice discussion tonight, and again, I thank you guys for being patient out to the Indie News Network.
Of course.
Yes, sir.
Chat room right now on YouTube that's on, and we're gonna go for as long as we need to tonight.
Yeah.
See, Joe doesn't know what that means. He hasn't been to one of our in-depth, crazy 4-hour streams me and Collin are willing to do. We're gonna try to not do that.
Well, we're not trying not to do that because I have bed.
Yeah.
But that being said, we've talked a little bit over the past week in particular, and then today.
Yeah.
And I know there's been stuff that you want to kind of add in, Joe. So this stream, for all intents and purposes, is you.
Yeah.
And I think given there's definitely some stuff that, again, with your expertise and you having been, you were just recently in Trinidad within the last year.
Yeah, 3 times.
Right. So I've never been, sadly, yet, but in connection with what's happening in Venezuela, we've kind of reported on that a little bit here for the last few months.
Sure.
In a way, in preparation for you to come on.
Oh, thank you.
We wanted your insight into that. But obviously, you as a multinational, you have, and I think one of the things I do appreciate about you, you have a rare gift to see things from a global scale of how our politics affects people in other places.
Correct. Yeah.
And how I think generally, not to say not all Americans, but I think because we're so isolated in this side of the world, we don't always think about how our actions implicate the actions of other nations.
Sure.
So you'll be able to help our audience bring some insight to that given your travels. So but yeah,
I'm now up to 52 countries, guys. 52 now. So yeah, I've seen a few places.
Yeah, we definitely should spend some time a little bit. As many of you guys know, for those of you in New York, DJ, you travel around the world.
Yep.
You know, so you might want to share a little bit in terms of what you're hoping for this year, in terms of your traveling and then your activism through your music.
Yeah.
And you know, like obviously, maybe if anyone in our audience, if they happen to be in the city near you, they know when and where to look out for you.
A few things coming up on the schedule. Next week, I'm at the at a festival in upstate Massachusetts. For the life of me, if you give me a second, I can show you where it is right now. Give me 12 seconds because I can tell you where it is. It is the Tropical Dreams Festival in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. I'm playing that. I'm actually playing the Saturday night. I think my set time is 1 to 2:30 in the morning, so early time or late, depending on your bedtime schedule. A few days after that, actually the following weekend, I'm off to Alaska, playing a show at Soldotna, Alaska. More details on that as they become available. Then February 7th, we're finalizing this one. It's going to be Lima, Peru. Off to Peru. That's going to be a good time. We're going to be, I think me and Jaime, the promoter there, we're going to be announcing that show probably tomorrow or the day after. Valentine's Day weekend, I actually might go to Trinidad because Carnival is that weekend.
Right.
So we shall see. The 20th is Brooklyn, New York. The 26th and 27th. The 27th is going to be, I think it's Jacksonville, Florida. We're going to be announcing that one soon. And then March, it's the Asia tour. And the Asia tour could be wild.
Right.
It could be a lot of countries. Could be, if everything works out and I get to everything, it could be as many as 13 countries on that tour, which means I would be gone for the better part of about 6 or 7 weeks.
Right. Wow.
And then, and then after that, that's basically April, March and April, basically cooked and booked. May, figure it out. June, probably going to be in Europe for at least 2 or 3 weeks in June. I've been asked by a friend of mine to play in Switzerland to play his biannual event in Bern, Switzerland. He wants me to come play, so I'm going to go ahead and head up to Bern, Switzerland. I've never been to Bern, Switzerland. I've been to Switzerland before, Geneva, I think 2 or 3 times, but never up north in the Swiss-German part of Switzerland. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll see what the festival season has to offer, see if I get to play some of these cool festivals, and if not, that's okay. I've
got to hit up the
going on in my life.
Jamaican dance hall scene, you know, hit up the sound systems one by one. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe. But I mean, in all seriousness, I've got enough going on in my life between working on music, music, some of the releases that I've got planned for later this year, and running around with a 15-year-old and her 10-year-old adopted sister. I'm
good luck.
Busy.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, business before we get started, you know, YouTube doesn't like giving us any money. It's demonetized us. So scan that QR code on your screen. Go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, and you can leave us a few dollary dues. Should pop up in the corner of the stream when you do. We appreciate that. We appreciate all the people who've already done so and supported us. Look at all these fine folks. Big old list. You know, you can go to these websites. Plenty of places to support us. So always links in description as well. So you boys ready to get started? I'm ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Dope. So Here's where we start. January 3rd, Fiorella Isabel, the U.S. terrorist regime has bombed Venezuela, breaking international law, whatever that means, if it does exist. I never want to hear anyone complain about the border or migrants when the U.S. just blasted a country people seek and will seek refuge from and endlessly bomb others. She also adds, Russia was reported to remove diplomats on 12/23rd, but denied this. China was there, and their attacks began shortly after. She finds it hard to believe that neither country was aware of what was coming. Not a single shot fired to capture him. No VZ air defense. I find this odd, considering Venezuela was and remains now ready to defend its sovereignty. My personal assessment, there was a deal, and based on the fact that Delcy Rodriguez remains at the helm, and Bolivarianism remains despite Maduro's forced departure, there will be a battle between Trump's picked candidate and Chavistas, which will ignite into a violent internal war, which then would manufacture consent for more of Washington's intervention, which is pretty much what we see playing out for the most part. At least that's what's being stoked so far. So, but what else we got? I thought the same thing, especially after what happened in Syria recently. If you followed that and the dealings with Assad being thrown out, very similar situation where people were paid off. Russia and China kind of looked the other way as it happened. You know, they have their own interests to keep up with, but on that Chinese delegation,
Who are these people?
Trump met with President Maduro hours before the U.S. military, or the delegation met with Maduro hours before the military operation. Trump, I don't know anything about that, but I have a very good relationship with Xi, and there won't be a problem. They're going to get the oil. We're going to allow people to have the oil. So that's always nice, you know, saying the quiet part out loud. Iran's been warned because they're next, and the thing is the so-called multipolar world would benefit either way, as some have mentioned. I also believe the Strait of Hormuz is a major part of this. No matter what China will want, need supply of oil, there's a lot more at play. I also think there was internal betrayal in some aspects. There had to be. So that's where we start. I know you guys have been following this. It's been all over your Twitter feeds. So, I mean, this is U.S. Intervention 101. Impose sanctions to weaken and destabilize, create psychological propaganda online, and mass media to increase positive perspective toward a push for regime change, infiltrate and create divisions internally to push for a more moderate U.S.-controlled government, take out leader via a deal or forced invasion, take over weakened government via appointing a new puppet or creating chaos via civil war, overtake affairs, and engage in resource extraction. Fee also adds, by the way, to all multipolar world sycophants, this once again, if I can actually work my machine, there we go. Neither China or Russia will get involved. This isn't World War III. They will condemn as they have and advocate for the UN to say something. What we're seeing is a unified attack on the last bastion of true anti-imperialism resistance. This is why you see them warning Iran. Alliances have occurred, but not in the superhero villain versus hero universe some of you reside in. It's much more like Game of Thrones, where no one is innocent and the people suffer for the greed and the political ambitions of those in power. Any questions? Any thoughts?
Collin, you go first, brother.
I mean, just having conversations with many of my people who are mostly liberal, it's amazing to me that even among the Latino community, some of them are like, well, we don't like Trump, but we appreciate what he's doing in terms of trying to free, quote unquote, Venezuela. Now, actually, Venezuela can be independent, or now Venezuela has the opportunity to be more sovereign. And I'm kind of like, it baffles me because, look, the reality is I am not well versed in global affairs like that. But I do know, I think, especially from being in the show, but even I think, I think for me, having lived in Africa for a good chunk, not a good chunk, but a significant time of my life, and being on the ground with local people there, it helped me realize that there's always a motive in the US, the West, in terms of resources. And I think we're going to hit, I say this a lot, but we're going to hit that, I think, especially hard tonight, especially when it comes to Trinidad, because I think even in Trinidad, I don't think people think of the implications of what's happening in Venezuela, how it will affect the island, and probably the Caribbean as a whole, but we'll get there later. But the idea that we are, like, it kind of brings in for me the idea of like the morality police, like the US must come in to save the world. And it's like, when in modern history has this actually been a thing, that when the US infiltrates a country in the name of democracy or to save it, that country has been better off? And I think, to be fair to a lot of my peers, a lot of them are younger than me, but all the same, we know what happened in Libya. We know what happened in Iraq. We know what happened to Cuba. We know what happened in Haiti. Funny how we were talking like last week, since it was New Year's, happy Haitian Independence Day. And this happened several days later, and people just forgot in terms of what the French did when the Haitians rebelled against the empire. So for me, it's like, and it's strange, but I think that kind of speaks to one, the propaganda, the manufactured consent that is very much in play in terms of what people are seeing and how they're perceiving things without knowing the nuance of these issues, because there's always going to be some layers in geopolitics, always. But my basic thing is, if the West, especially the US, is involved in any way, shape, or form, it's never a good thing, especially for the countries that are involved. And as I say a lot, especially as a teacher where I teach young children patterns, once you know a pattern, it's pretty much, you got it. There's not going to be any change to it. So it's just the idea of like people, either by just ignorance or just plain, just trying to keep your head in the sand, that they're not seeing how our infiltration of Venezuela is not good. And say what you want about Maduro. Look, I've said this, and I think living in Africa, and I've said this on the show, there are certain African presidents, prime ministers, I do not particularly like. And I've said that openly here. But what I've learned, especially living in the global South, is I do not have the right to kind of call out their government when people generally like their leaders. That's what I experienced when I was living in Uganda. That's what I experienced living in Rwanda. I could call out Museveni and Kagame all day long. But if the people who, and again, there is corruption there. But ultimately, the people that I know in those countries in particular like their leaders. So I do not have a place to kind of call out their leaders, especially given our leaders who do the same corruption, if not worse. And people in the global South are very happy to call that out in terms of our US politics and how it affects their countries.
Yeah. Anything you got to add, Joe?
Colin, there's a lot there. And thank you for sharing all of that. I think the first thing that we need to realize is I am not a foreign policy expert by any stretch of the imagination, so I'm not going to armchair quarterback this on a Wednesday or a Monday or a Saturday afternoon and say, oh, well, yeah, I know everything about the Maduro government. I'm also not going to go ahead and make this a particularly unilateral situation and simply blame Republicans or blame MAGA. Because if you understand any of the history involving Maduro, Obama didn't like Maduro at all. Obama was the first president to designate Venezuela as a country of concern. Then Trump tried to coup Maduro and Venezuela. It didn't work. Then Biden comes in, and this was last January. Biden did this, put a $25 million bounty on Nicolas Maduro. Nothing ever happened with it. Pam Bondi, not too long ago, doubled the bounty to $50 million, and then we had the invasion over this past weekend. And what I'm keenly tired of hearing from content creators, YouTube networks, media on the internet, your legacy media, is calling this a regime change. There's nothing regime change about any of this. The same political infrastructure is there. Maduro's vice president is now in charge. This isn't a regime change. They deposed, they kidnapped the leader of a country, took that leader from Venezuela to the United States, and now they have held that leader and the first lady of that country hostage. That's what this is. No more, no less. This isn't regime change, because if this was regime change, then all of the political apparatus would be gone. All of the military would have been either imprisoned, eliminated, or both. This isn't a true regime change. This is, so, I mean, let's stop calling it a regime change. And I'm also incredibly tired of being gaslit from, quite frankly, the White House about this being about drugs. This is about drugs. This is about cocaine. He's a narco-terrorist. Ask your Reef, Collin, and the listeners and the viewers online right now, ask yourself this question. If the president of a country had the world's largest oil reserves that are potentially worth hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars, why would that president be involved in dealing drugs and shipping cocaine into America?
Right.
Why would he do that? If you got all this money sitting in the ground, ready to be nationalized and used for your own country's benefit, why would you be involved in narco-terrorism? Moreover, if this is about drugs, then why would the Trump administration on December 1st of last year, so a little more than a month ago, pardon Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, who, get this, everybody, get this, who trafficked over 400 tons of cocaine. Not 400 ounces, not 400 grams, not 400 cereal boxes, 400 tons of cocaine. Collin, you live not too far away from the Washington Zoo. There's an elephant exhibit in the zoo.
Right.
Your standard African elephant weighs about a ton. Right. So imagine 400 elephants of cocaine being brought into the United States and weapons. Okay? Now, Juan Orlando Hernandez I wouldn't say captured. He was taken into custody by federal drug agents, I think in February of 2022. And then he was extradited in April of 2022. His trial began in February of 2024. He got convicted of drug trafficking and weapons charges and was sentenced to a 45-year jail sentence. His brother is in jail for life and not getting out. So he gets a 45-year jail sentence, and his sentence began in March. He got pardoned last month. I want to make sure that listeners and everybody understands this. A guy who trafficked 400 tons of cocaine got less time in jail than your average crack dealer in Southeast Washington, D.C. or on the west side of Baltimore. That happened. And you're probably like, well, Joe, how could something like this happen? How could this be? And we're going to mention this guy's name several times in tonight's telecast because I think he is one of the worst Americans that America has ever produced. Joe Biden. We're bringing him up again.
There you go.
How else could this happen? Joe, let me get into this
ahead.
a little bit more, because if you remember, maybe you don't remember, in 1986, Joe Biden wrote and sponsored the Narcotics Penalties and Enforcement Act. This was known colloquially as the 100-to-1 rule, where cocaine, you had to have 100 times the amount of cocaine in order to receive the same amount of punishment with crack. 100-to-1. So in 1988, Joe Biden wrote and sponsored the Anti-Drug Act. This was known as the crack bill. The crack bill authorized the mandatory minimum prison sentence of 5 years. The crack bill also eliminated parole for all federal drug crimes, and it also reinstituted the federal death penalty. So the minimum amount of crack that you needed to possess in order to receive a 5-year mandatory prison sentence is 5 grams. 5 grams is a teaspoon. So your low-level crack dealer on the west side of Baltimore or southeast Washington, D.C., or the south side of Chicago, or in any inner city, served more time in prison than the former president of a country that trafficked 400 tons of cocaine. 400 tons of cocaine. So if this is, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I'm not interested in hearing about, oh, this is about drugs. If this is about drugs, then why hasn't the United States adequately sanctioned Daniel Noboa and his billionaire father, Alex? And Daniel Noboa is the current president of Ecuador, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And his father owns a shipping company. And there were a bunch of Serbians and Bosnians from Eastern Europe who had trafficked cocaine in banana boxes through that shipping company. Why aren't they being sanctioned? Because if we're going to talk about drugs, and if we're going to talk about sanctioning drug companies, why aren't we sanctioning the Sackler family, who is single-handedly responsible for the opioid crisis in this country? Why aren't we going after the pharmaceutical industry? Why aren't we going after these food manufacturers that consistently put dye and sugar in every single food imaginable? Why aren't we going after these companies that put seed oils in everything, that are ruining the health of Americans? But, oh, this isn't really about drugs. It can't be about drugs, is it? Because the reason why we're going after these people, we're going after Maduro, is because his country has something that we want. Right. Honduras doesn't have anything that America needs or wants, because we can get bananas and other tropical fruits from other countries in Central and South America or the Caribbean. But where are we going to get cocaine from? Where are we going to get heavy crude oil from? Where's that coming from? Is that coming from the shores of Costa Rica? Is that coming from Belize? Is that coming from Honduras? Is that coming from Panama? Is that coming from Port of Spain, Trinidad, Collin? Is that coming from Bridgetown, Barbados? Is that what are we talking about here? Is that where we're getting these from? We're not getting these. We're not getting that. So the United States has mastered gaslighting, and they've mastered gaslighting the public. So when we're told this is about drugs, but we're also going to take the oil and take their ships, and we're going to force Venezuela into doing deals that only favor American multinational corporations, and they have to end their business ties with China, Russia, and Iran.
Right. I think for me, that's the gag from what I'm hearing people online. It's like, we will benefit from, I'm like, in what way, shape, or form will, like, the average regular schmegular Joe would benefit from
here you go,
oil that at the end of the day does not even belong to us?
This is why I like bringing the two of you on.
It's going to benefit.
It's like y'all read the slideshow beforehand and wanted to hit all the points before we get to the slides. You know, it's great. Like, I love it. Here's Asa Winstanley. Like, what's particularly
Reef, before you jump in real quick, Reef.
Before you jump
in, Reef. And here's the other thing. If we're talking about drugs, if we're talking about getting this whole situation, what are we doing here? What is America truly after? What do we really do? Go ahead, Reef. Go ahead.
So Winstanley's going to agree with you, Doug. What's particularly ridiculous about the flagrant American lie that President Maduro is some sort of drug kingpin is that the U.S. openly ran Afghanistan as a heroin colony for 20 years. The country under U.S. puppet rule supplied 90% of the world's heroin, and the U.S.-backed rulers all took their cut. After the Taliban ejected the occupiers, poppy production stopped virtually overnight. As always, imperial propaganda is pure projection. And by the way, U.S. empire has been behind large parts of the global network of legal drugs trafficking generally since at least the end of World War II, often as part of the covert operations to subvert socialist movements and sovereign states the world over. Good books include Gary Webb's Dark Alliance, Seth Harp's The Fort Bragg Cartel, and Peter Dale Scott's Deep Politics and the Death of JFK. Black people in the hood have been telling you.
Real quick, guys.
Go ahead.
Real quick, just so you know, obviously we're talking about you have this and you also have government intelligence involved in this, most notably the Central Intelligence Agency. I think everybody here understands that the CIA is not the Central Intelligence Agency. They are the cocaine import agency.
Correct.
That is exactly what they are. And if you read Gary Webb's book,
military plane.
If you read Gary Webb's book, he talks about all of that in depth. And by the way, for our music fans out there, one of Gary Webb's informants and one of the people that was involved with tipping off the DEA and the CIA with regards to drugs was a notorious drug dealer out of Los Angeles. His name was Freeway Ricky Ross. Freeway Ricky Ross. So awesome. for our hip hop fans, the drug dealer Freeway Ricky Ross became two hip hop monikers. You had the rapper from Philadelphia named Freeway, and of course you have the Miami rapper Rick Ross, who every day I'm hustling. That
the
Rick
real
Ross.
Noriega.
So,
he owes me 100 favors.
Real Noriega, he owed me 100 favors. Exactly. Exactly.
So in that same vein, black people in the hood have been telling y'all that the real Latin American drug dealers are all CIA since the 80s. We know this because our old heads, uncles, and even current friends are the ones who dealt with the plugs. We are in community with these people. And here you go. Here's Dr. Hillary Agro. She's going to explain to you how this is all nonsense. So
the U.S. government has borrowed. We just want to talk to him. That's all. We just want to talk. The Venezuelan president. The American president says it's to protect the country from drugs. How we feeling about that, fam? Do we feel like that's an accurate assessment of the situation? Is it helping? Do you feel safer now that this has happened? Do you feel protected?
Come on.
Economics and activists have been saying for decades that the war on drugs is not about what the government says it's about. I know, it's a shocker, but sometimes the government, they lie. I know, it's really heartbreaking. The government says that the war on drugs is about keeping you safe. First of all, please do tell me if you think that the war on drugs has been effective at keeping drugs out of your community. They've been at it for 50 years now with the war on drugs, so surely the drugs are gone, right? It's working. Drugs aren't more potent and more widely available and cheaper than ever now after 50 years of this approach to drugs, right? That couldn't be. They tell us that it's supposed to keep us safe. Please, bro, just $1 more billion for the war on drugs. Come on, bro, that's all I need. If we just militarize the police a little more, I swear we'll get rid of all the drugs. Please, just one more military coup in Latin America. Please, bro, come on, bro. I need to bomb these boats. I swear we're so close. Just a couple billion more dollars and we're gonna get it done, I swear. Systems theorist Stafford Beer coined the term, the purpose of a system is what it does. This is an approach where instead of looking at a system based on what it's supposed to do or what its proponents, especially the people trying to sell you on it, say it does, you look at what the system actually does in practice. That is its actual purpose. So, for example...
Yeah, exactly. But I find it funny you talked about, like, you brought up this slide. Hold on, I'll get it. About the 400 tons of cocaine. Like, where is this at? I have it, I promise. So here we go. On the left,
quick, was Hillary Agro a real doctor? What's she a doctor of?
Anthropology.
I've never heard of her. Anthropology. Okay.
Yeah.
clearing that up.
You're welcome. Eva Green Bartlett. On the left, Maduro as a hostage after being kidnapped. And on the right, Orlando Hernandez, a drug trafficker convicted by the U.S. after trafficking more than 400 tons of cocaine. Vanessa Beeley, America KKK Secretary of Genocidal State, says he cannot comment on the pardon of former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez because he's too busy to know what the president is doing. Bodes well. So, and I'm not even going to subject you people to the words of Marco Rubio. So, fuck that guy, you know?
Please.
Like, but what I will subject you all to is this guy. That you all know this guy. This was in 1989, right? Joe already kind of alluded to this. So let's see if this rings any bells for people. See if this sounds familiar.
Put it in very personal terms for a moment. Joe Biden, me, I would settle for a world in which I could worry about the same kinds of things that my parents worried about, in which I only had to worry about the grades my children got in school rather than the drugs they're being exposed to, in which I only had to worry about the prices my wife had to pay at the supermarket instead of fearing that she might get mugged by a junkie in the parking lot as she loads her groceries into the car.
Yeah, like his
in
son.
which tonight I could call my mom just to wish her
Son of a
pleasant
bitch.
dreams,
Hate that.
not for the purpose of
Dude,
making
you
sure
and me
she's
and both.
safe in her own home. That's the kind of world I want. That's the kind of world you deserve. In a nutshell, the president's plan doesn't include enough police officers to catch the violent thugs.
No,
not
of course
enough
not.
prosecutors to convict them, not enough judges to sentence them, and not enough prison cells to put them away for a long time. We disagree with the president's decision to cut back on our previous commitment to protect against drugs coming across the border.
But wait, there's
to cut
more.
the Customs Service, the Coast Guard, and the Border Patrol. We think we should do more to stem the flow of drugs across our borders. And
What should we
think
do,
we
Joe?
should go one step further. Let's go after the drug lords where they live
Oh,
with an international strike force.
okay.
There must be no safe haven for these narco-terrorists.
Narco-terrorists, you
They must
say?
know it.
Got it.
And we don't have to promise a world without worry or fear.
No.
We're not asking for that much.
No.
All we have to do together is to keep our promises and stay together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fuck you.
Reef, Collin, guys, give me about 2 minutes because I want to talk about that video and
Yeah.
tie it into a lot of other things here.
The floor is yours.
This is the height of fuckery on every possible level. My God. And did you listen to what Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. said? He said, we're going to increase border security, especially with the Coast Guard. And we're going to have more judges and more prison cells. Bear in mind, this was in 1989. Okay?
Mhm.
Give me about 2 minutes because there's an entire timeline that we have to talk about with respect to drugs, politics, and everything going on right now. So 1989, he makes that speech. 1990, Joe Biden wrote and sponsored the Crime Control Act. The Crime Control Act screwed over student loan holders. What it also did, it eliminated plea bargaining for all federal drug crimes. So you couldn't cop a plea if you knew one of your bosses at the cartel you were willing to give them up. So if you got sentenced to 30 years, you were doing all 30 years of that penalty. No questions asked, no parole, because the Anti-Drug Act of 1988, otherwise known as the Crack Bill, shut down parole. Okay? So 1991, get ready for this, guys. Joe Biden wrote and sponsored the first version of the crime bill, the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1991. That bill went nowhere. In November of 1991, Joe Biden teams up with everybody's favorite segregationist, a senator out of South Carolina named Strom Thurmond. And the bill was called the Biden-Thurmond Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1991. The bill passed in the Senate. House Democrats filibustered it. Why? Because it wasn't tough enough on crime. And it wasn't tough enough on drugs. Also in 1991, the following year would have been 1992, which would have been the presidential election. So the last thing House Democrats wanted to do was to give George H.W. Bush this massive legislative victory before the presidential election contest between George Herbert Walker Bush and Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton becomes president. They go back into the room. Joe Biden rewrites the crime bill for a third time. Now, bear in mind, another part of the crime bill in 1991. Do you all remember what happened in March of 1991 in Los Angeles?
1991 in Los Angeles. 1990. I think I threw one brick to make that window drop. I think that's around that time.
Yeah, it's called Rodney King. Exactly. Yeah. Rodney King happened in 1991. In May of 1991, as part of the crime bill, Joe Biden wrote a separate bill called the Police Bill of Rights. The Police Bill of Rights insulated police officers from civil penalties and civil lawsuits, and it also reduced the amount of possibilities for criminalizing police officers in the line of duty. So when 35 or 37 white cops beat a black guy up, instead of excoriating the cops and writing a bill to protect black people from state-sanctioned police violence, Joe Biden went the other way and decided to protect the cops even further. But we'll continue on. So in 1993, the crime bill got passed. In 1994, Bill Clinton signs the bill into law. Here's where things get crazier. In 1995, Joe Biden wrote and sponsored the Counterterrorism Act. The Counterterrorism Act was designed to be an anti-immigration bill. It was also designed to increase government surveillance through wiretaps, increased border security, and surveillance through various types of technology. That bill was only introduced. It went absolutely nowhere. 6 years later, in September of 2001, September 11th happened. 7 weeks after September 11th happened, the Patriot Act got signed into law. The Patriot Act is the exact same legislation as the Counterterrorism Act of 1995. The only difference between the two bills is that the Patriot Act authorized something like $30 to $35 billion to create a new department in the federal government called the Department of Homeland Security. Now, before the Department of Homeland Security, there was one organization that was single-handedly responsible for all immigration issues. That organization was called INS, Immigration and Naturalization Services. And I'm quite familiar with them because I became a naturalized citizen in the United States in 1995. So INS was dissolved when the Department of Homeland Security got formed. There were two subsidiary organizations that came from the Department of Homeland Security. One of those organizations dealt with protecting the borders and customs issues. You know that organization now as CBP, Customs and Border Protection. The other organization that came from the dissolution of Immigration and Naturalization Services that now fell under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security dealt with immigration and enforcing customs issues in the United States. You know that organization now as ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Yep. So when I say to people that, that this whole ICE situation and all of the border protection that we're seeing right now, and how could Trump do this with ICE? How could he do this? Trump didn't create ICE.
Right.
Bush didn't create ICE. Bill Clinton didn't create ICE. A lowly state senator out of Delaware is the brainchild of ICE. He's also the reason why we have the government surveillance that we have now. So the reason why you have to take your laptop out of your bag and take your shoes off and you can't go through an airport with 8 ounces of hummus in your book bag is because of Joe Biden. All of this is because of him. So when we talk about narco-terrorism, when we talk about increasing the prison population, again, I said this a few minutes ago. We went to a place and arrested a narco-terrorist. It was Juan Orlando Hernandez.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, he also took a $1 million bribe from El Chapo.
Yep.
Why isn't he rotting in a jail cell right now?
We know why.
But again, this country majors in gaslighting. Forget about baseball and apple pie. It's gaslighting and fake news. Fake news. That's why I'm on the Indie News Network, because we talk about real news here.
Hey, fucking giving us the free advertisement. I'll take it. Speaking of fake news, you got the New York Post, which if you guys aren't burning that rag, I don't know what you're doing. But here they're putting up this pro-Maduro motorcycle gang nonsense, right? Again, more consent manufacturing. Here's Fiorella Isabel again. Breaking Maduro gangs, blah, blah, blah. False. But what's true is ICE just shot and killed a legal woman in her car in Minneapolis in broad daylight. So that woman, Renee Nicole Good, right? Shot in the face by an ICE officer, right? What did you say, Joe? Mother of 3? Something like that?
She was a mother of 3. Her dog was in the car, and Renee Nicole Good's wife was in the car. And Reef and Collin and listeners, here's what I want to know. Where are all the Second Amendment sycophants talking about this? Moreover, it was a couple of months ago when Charlie Kirk's neck was leaking. His neck sprung a leak. And what did we hear? Especially from the right? Oh my God, Charlie Kirk, he was a martyr. He was a true American. He was a real patriot. But what did we hear about his wife? We heard about Erica Kirk. Oh my gosh, America, we have to pray for Erica Kirk. We have to make sure that she's protected. The salvation of the Lord will protect her.
Buy her merch.
Erica Kirk, buy her merch. And remember, Erica Kirk, and I don't mind saying this, Erica Kirk is part of that protected class of white womanhood. That's who she is. She's part of that protected class of white womanhood. So the same people that were on the right that said, we have to protect Erica Kirk, we have to make sure that nothing happens to her. Where are they when ICE goes ahead and puts 2 bullets in a white woman's head in Minneapolis, Minnesota? Where are these people? Where are they? Where are they? And look, I don't live in Minneapolis. I got plenty of friends in Minneapolis, plenty of them. But everybody remembers what happened on May 25th, 2020 on the corner of 38th and Chicago streets in Minneapolis. Everybody saw what happened with George Perry Floyd Jr. Everybody saw what happened with Philando Castile. It was live streamed on Facebook. Everybody saw what happened with Jamal Clark back in 2015. There was an encampment in front of the police station for about 2.5 weeks. Everybody saw what happened with Dante Wright. Everybody saw what happened with Amir Locke. Everybody saw what happened. I'm beyond tired of this in America. I'm beyond tired of this in this country. Why do we have to deal with this? Why are we having to deal with ICE randomly shooting people and killing people? For what? And again, if the cop was fearing for his life and the cop wanted to immobilize the vehicle, why didn't they shoot at the tires? And bear in mind, Erica Good was driving a sport utility vehicle. And I would imagine that sport utility vehicle was a 4-wheel drive vehicle. And all the ICE agents had SUVs. We saw them in the video. So why didn't you shoot out the tires? They had just had snow in Minneapolis, and that road was partially snow plowed, but there was still plenty of snow off to the side of the road. Where is she going to go? Where is she running to? Who's getting out of an SUV and running away on wet roads in the middle of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the middle of winter? Where is she running to? How is she going to get away? Why didn't they shoot the tires? That's all. If you wanted to immobilize the vehicle, why didn't you shoot the tires? They didn't want to shoot the tires because they wanted to kill somebody. And supposedly the ICE agent, air quotes, agent, and I'm going to say it, and I don't care who says what, that murdered this woman. ICE is trying to get that guy out of the state.
Yep.
To avoid arrest and/or prosecution.
Or worse.
And now Tim Walz wants to go ahead and enlist the National Guard. Where have we heard that before from Tim Walz? Oh, about 5 years ago, when black people were marching in the streets saying Black Lives Matter, hands up, don't shoot, oh, hold on, we're going to get all these N-words in line and we're going to stick the National Guard on them.
Which is funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of the mainstream independent commentators don't mention that. They call Walz like the savior of Minnesota because, oh, he gave children free lunch. Not forgetting that he's a fucking Zionist, which we talked about on the show. But in addition to that, just for that, like when Black people were trying to rally behind what was going on in Minnesota, he brought in the cops. So no heroes. Oh, there's no heroes.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. When Black people were in the streets 5 summers ago, and Collin, you and I have been in these streets, when Black people were saying, hey, defund the police, put that into resources, put that into community resources, community organizations. What did Tim Walz do? Nah, fuck that. Here's some more cops, guys. Same, by the way, oh my gosh, the architect of mass policing and mass incarceration in the United States did the same thing on a presidential level. That would have been Joe Biden.
Yep.
When people were imploring him to do something and not put cops into the streets and defund the police and invest in community resources and invest in community health programs and invest in urban farming. And invest in trying to do something about eliminating food deserts and making sure that every city in America has clean water. Flint, Michigan still has lead in the water. So does Jackson, Mississippi. So these are the things that we just want: clean water and clean air and reasonably decent public transportation and schools that don't smell like piss. That's all we wanted. And take that money out of the cops' pocket and put it into these organizations, or really more into these institutions. And what did the president of the United States do? Fuck you, N-words. Here's some more cops.
And you ain't Black.
That's what he did.
And not to mention he funded ICE more. And that's the thing that people don't remember or not know. Like, you gave Trump the layup in terms of having now ICE and the cops as his personal toys that he can use wherever he wants, however he wants, and no one's going to do a damn thing about it.
And not only is no one doing anything about it, look, guys, and everybody in the chat here, if America had a reasonable opposition party, let's flip this around. If the Democrats did something like what Trump did over this past weekend, or Trump 1.0, what do you think the Republicans would have done? Republicans would have shut this fucking country down.
Right.
The Republicans have shut this country down for a lot less. But when it comes to the Democrats and we ask them to do something, or at least make us feel like there's some sort of opposition politically in the United States, what do we hear from Chuck Schumer? Oh, well, I'll say, I'm not sure if we can really call this a genocide because, I don't know, AIPAC. Right? Hakeem Jeffries, that Timo Obama milk dud ass. Well, we have to make sure that all the parameters have been met in order to create a legality of illegality. And right now, God is with me. I got to go to church. And what is this? We don't have any. Where are the Democrats about what happened in Minneapolis tonight? Where are they? And look, guys, I watched every.
They'll put their thoughts and prayers in. You know,
I watched every second of Jacob Fry's press conference today, and I didn't watch it on American news because
I'm sorry,
the American mainstream legacy media stinks. I ended up watching it on Sky News in the UK, and I'm not a Jacob Fry fan at all. I thought he should have resigned right after the whole George Floyd situation. But for that 10-minute press conference, he actually looked like a leader. He actually looked like he cared about what happened. Curse words and invectives besides the fact. He looked like he was genuinely upset about ICE being in his city. But then again, if he was genuinely upset about ICE being in his city, then why didn't he take any sort of preventative measures to make sure that ICE wasn't there in the first place? Brandon Johnson did something about it in Chicago for the most part. Brandon Scott in Baltimore did what he could to make sure, at least limit the scourge of ICE in those two cities. So why didn't Jacob Fry attempt to do the same thing? Why? And clearly that's a rhetorical question, because I don't expect either of you guys to answer it, because there isn't an answer, because neither of you guys can answer that question. Only Jacob Fry can answer that question. And if somebody were to ask him that question at the press conference, it would be at minimum inappropriate and at worst offensive, given the circumstances of what happened today with Renee Nicole Good. It's tragic what's going on in this country. It's fucking tragic.
But it's by design.
Especially when we have state-sanctioned violence that's allowed to occur like this.
Well, and this is why I say that's America being itself. We speak on this as this is brand new, but this is the basis of what this country was founded on. It's just more morphed into something that's the monster now, but we've always been like this.
Look, America runs on two things: Duncan and racism.
I mean, you've seen what I said today on Twitter. I was like, we used to be a proper society that would form a posse and string up corrupt sheriffs. Can we bring that back? No, just me. Okay.
String up. We have people in this country that can't even tie their shoelaces.
Dude, I know.
Forget about stringing anybody up.
Yeah, I mean, we can have NASCAR people throw up nooses when they want. Somebody knows how to work some rope somewhere. Fucking racist assholes. All right. So back to our regularly scheduled Venezuela programming. It's just like in the vein of like shitty Democrats too. Collin, you caught this fucking CIA stooge this week. Let me get it. Here we go. Zwame Mamdani, this guy, Obama 3.0, who said, he was briefed this morning on the Venezuelan capture of Maduro, right? All this stuff. He called Trump and voiced his opinion. Got to make sure, daddy knows you're upset, apparently. You said it wrong hollow, right? Called Maduro a dictator as well. Right. So we remember. Pepperidge Farm remembers, right? What did Mamdani say? I want to be clear about my position. I want to be clear. I believe both Nicolas Maduro and Miguel Diaz-Canel are dictators, quote unquote. Their administrations have stifled free and fair elections. Not true. Imprisoned political opponents and suppressed a free and fair press. Because we know nothing about that here. So, like, what else we got? Speaking of shit fucking politicians, right? This fucking lady, Tulsi Gabbard, right? This was in what, 2019, when she hadn't completely sold out yet, or she had to like a controlled opposition gonna control op. Yep. The U.S. needs to stay out of Venezuela, right? This is her thoughts. Now what is it? President Trump promised the American people he would secure our borders, confront narco-terrorism, and dangerous drug cartels and traffickers. Kudos to our servicemen and women and intelligence ops, which you are one, for their flawless execution of President Trump's order to deliver on his promise through Operation Absolute Resolve. So,
real quick, folks, if this was a flawless operation, if this was a truly flawless operation, given what we've seen the United States do in other countries, if this was a flawless operation, then why is Nicolas Maduro and his wife still alive? If this was a flawless operation,
right?
Because the last time I checked, Osama bin Laden is dead. The last time I checked, Muammar Gaddafi is dead. So if this was a flawless operation like Tulsi Gabbard and many of the neocons and rhinos in the American government and many of the neoliberals and just everybody in Congress, then why is Nicolas Maduro and his lovely wife still alive? Why are they sitting at the Stewart Air Force Base and now actually at some prison at a jail cell in New York City? Why? If this was a flawless operation.
Here you go. On Mamdani's like nonsense, here's Kala Walsh talking about DSA and their involvement with him. Not only did DSA star Ziauron call Venezuela a dictatorship, but last summer, DSA undermined Venezuela's legitimate election results and PSUV's victory, manufacturing consent for this war. DSA's International Committee had representatives observing the democratic elections, including an NPC member, and then the NPC requested they take down their statement supporting the results, and they did. It is completely beyond me why this is not a hard red line for self-proclaimed anti-imperialists in DSA, and why they continue to prop up the organization, which has also supported regime change efforts in Cuba and Iran and Syria and plenty of other places. DSA is the epitome of the social imperialist, social fascist tendency that predominates the American left. So no matter how many soft liberal anti-war statements DSA releases, now naively calling for a peaceful and multilateral U.S. foreign policy, they have Venezuelans' blood on their hands. Kala also adds 70% of the U.S. people oppose military action in Venezuela, but what are they actually going to do about it? As the empire opens up new fronts of counter-revolution, anti-imperialists have a duty to open up all possible fronts of revolution, no matter where they are geographically. Aiden Simmerdome, Maduro is literally in New York. Why aren't millions of Americans out on the streets? Because this shit happens, where we co-opt our actual protests so that they do nothing, right? Q, the police permitted rally where NGOs spend hundreds of dollars printing "No War on Venezuela" signs to march in circles around an empty building chanting "No justice, no peace," pat themselves on the back, and go home. So,
and moreover, guys, we not only co-opt movements, but we also corporatize protesting. What else do you see from 5501? If 5501 is supposed to be this revolutionary organization that is about mobilizing people in the streets, okay, then where were they this past weekend?
Yep.
And by the way, and this is, and again, I got to keep bringing this back up to the government, because this, if we're talking about narco terrorists and we're talking about criminals, then why in the world was Benjamin Netanyahu eating matzo ball soup and gefilte fish at the
well, my state? Get the fuck out of my state. Fuck you. Get the fuck
out. Why was he in Mar-a-Lago?
Mm-hmm.
Why was he in Mar-a-Lago this week talking with Trump?
I hope he gets
New Year's
ate by a fucking like invasive reptile like he is. Because we got those here too.
Why was he there? If we're talking about criminals, and if the United States is supposed to be the global police and the world's police and stopping narco terrorism and stopping terrorism in general, who's more terrorist than Benjamin Netanyahu? And by the way, if the Department of Justice and the FBI had anything about them, why is Trump not in a jail cell right now?
Mm-hmm.
Why is Joe Biden not in a jail cell right now? Why isn't everybody from the previous presidential administration not in a jail cell right now? And we know the names. Why isn't Anthony the Butcher Blinken not in jail? Why isn't he in jail? Why isn't Sabrina Singh, John Kirby, Vedant Patel, Karine Jean-Pierre, Kamala Harris? Why aren't all of them in jail? All of them. Every military general that had aided and abetted that genocide that's taking place in Palestine right now. Why aren't they in jail? Because it's okay when they do it. But when somebody else does what the United States has cornered the market on, we can't have that. America can't have that discussion. America can't have that discussion. America, this country specializes in not only gaslighting, we have cornered the market on hypocrisy. That's who we are. That's what we are. It's ridiculous.
Really is. So, some suggestions for what people can do. Calla Walsh, Venezuela does not need our symbolic statements, poems, and parades. We saw the total failure of the solidarity strategy with Gaza. Venezuela and Gaza need international military brigades, people to sabotage imperialist infrastructure within the core, global revolution. To people who feel outraged, please go plan a sabotaging a weapons factory in a video game, YouTube, or literally anything more meaningful than another useless, police-controlled NGO parade. The Answer Coalition strategy has been a counterinsurgent failure since they started during the Iraq War. So, people calling it out. I think, there we go. Bolshevik baddie, dear gringos, striking at points of production and sabotaging the supply chain that makes war on Venezuela possible, far more valuable than any think piece you can come up with right now. Marwa Osman, USA is a major driver of global terrorism, a country that invades, bombs, sanctions, arms occupations, and greenlights mass killing, doesn't get to hide behind excuses. Saying there's nothing we can do is so not honesty. It is outright cowardice. Do you even know what a revolution means? It means refusing to stay quiet when crimes are committed in your name. Your silence is not neutral. If you see it, understand it, and still choose comfort over resistance, then you are in fact complicit in every massacre and every genocide this rogue system carries out. So, friend of the show, Marwa, killing it out there. Anything else you guys want to add? No.
You know, it's ridiculous. It's utterly. I'm just so angry by everything that's happening right now. Everything.
So I wanted to.
And by the way, if we're talking about criminals, and the government going after criminals, where in the fuck are the Epstein files? Where are the criminals from that?
We're getting that.
Yeah, Maduro got arrested before anyone in that list. So, you know, like
where are the Epstein files? Where are the criminals from the Epstein files?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't they rotting in jail cells right now? But they're not, because we have an idiot named Kash Patel who I wouldn't trust to run a lemonade stand. I wouldn't trust him to sell Girl Scout cookies at the local Harris Teeter in my neighborhood.
Don't tempt him.
He might, because you know what? He might put cocaine in them and then set us up. So let me stay away from that.
So,
but those Thin Mints, trust me, they're nice.
We've been talking about why this happened a couple of times tonight. We've mentioned oil. We've mentioned resources, Chevron, making bank, bunch of places making bank. What we haven't talked about is where do all roads lead to foreign policy, Care Bear?
Tel Aviv.
Unfortunately, that is the case. Do either of you know anything about the Isaac Accords? You may be familiar with his biblical father, Abraham, right? And the Abraham Accords, and how that went. But we've talked about, there we go. This is from Robert Inlakesh, friend of the show, in the Palestine Chronicle, why Israel is pushing the regime change in Venezuela through Washington. Now, I'll spell you this whole article, link in the doobly-doo, as always, but I will read this bit. So, while it is clear Venezuela is allied with Iran and collaborates with it as means of navigating the world under crushing U.S. sanctions, key point, these conspiracy theories presented by pro-Israel think tanks, Israel-lobbied sponsored politicians, and Israeli-aligned media outlets are about as serious as the claims that led to the Iraq War in terms of the evidence to back them up. Another motivating factor in Israel's desire to see the Venezuelan state toppled is the emergence of what is now being called the Isaac Accords. This initiative was announced publicly by President Javier Milei last month, right? So, failing to rope more major Arab and Muslim nations into the Trump administration's so-called Abraham Accords, like Qatar, the UAE, and their shenanigans in Sudan, all that stuff, right? So the Israeli government is now setting its sights on Latin America. The Isaac Accords demonstrates an active push from Israel to expand its influence in the Western Hemisphere. Left-wing movements and governments in Latin America have historically stood with Palestine. If Venezuela government is toppled, it is predicted that there will be a domino-style effect, knocking out other left-wing governments in the region, or at least the U.S. will move on to the next targets. This means both Cuba and Nicaragua will be in the firing line. Yes, sir.
Real quick, I wanted to talk about when you said left-wing movements and governments in Latin America have historically stood with the Palestinian cause,
exactly,
and the of unified resistance. One of the left-wing movements and governments that have typically stood with the Palestinian cause and who have faced a United States coup is Bolivia.
Yep.
Are we familiar with this?
Oh,
guys?
we are. In
Bolivia,
fact,
if you remember,
if
you remember several years ago.
1980s, you mean? Right
Yeah,
here in Bolivia, right? This little country right there. I mean, this is all the other coups,
yeah,
if you wanted to list them. Cuba,
right,
Guatemala, Salvador,
right,
Honduras. So,
right.
yeah,
But
go
we're
ahead.
also talking about what happened several years ago when Elon Musk had a tweet with respect to Bolivia when he was saying, we'll coup who we want. And the reason why he wanted to enact a coup in Bolivia is because Bolivia has a lot of lithium, tons of it. Now, if you remember, the one of the previous presidents of Bolivia was a man named Evo Morales. Evo Morales was a farmer. He was a labor leader. He was head of the political party called MAS, the Movement for Socialism. And he was the president of Bolivia for about 10 years. And then he was deposed by and he was also the first man of indigenous descent, South American indigenous descent, to be president of a country. He's a member of I forget, begins with a letter A. I forget the indigenous group he belongs to, but he's the first indigenous man person who's ever become leader of a country in South America. The U.S. then forced him out and installed a woman there from basically a puppet named Janine Áñez. And there was a whole lot of, quite frankly, a lot of colorism involved in this also, because Janine Áñez looked like your middle-aged high school teacher who just happened to have a Latin sounding name. She looked like a white lady.
Yeah.
So that was also part of it. And now Evo Morales is second in command, I think was the finance minister, a guy named Luis Arce. So the next time there was a presidential election, which was about a year later or so, Luis Arce won the presidential election. Evo Morales, who was forced into exile in Argentina, eventually came back to the country. Bolivia now has a super far left president named Rodrigo Paz. So do not be surprised if Bolivia is potentially one of these countries that has a strong left-wing movement that supports Palestine and has mineral resources that the United States wants, because you certainly need lithium for all of these car batteries and solar panels in the United States. You're going to need it. And I also think what you're also going to see with respect to not necessarily just Bolivia and left-wing movements in South America, but I think what's going to happen in terms of Trump and his reign of terror, I don't think it stops in South America. I think he takes this to Africa.
Oh, no.
Oh, already is.
He takes this to Africa.
Yeah.
Already is.
And he takes this to Africa. And if you remember, it was a couple of weeks ago when he said that he bombed Nigeria to protect Christians.
Been bombing Yemen.
Nigeria to protect Christians. Okay. Donald Trump doesn't care about black people, and he doesn't like Christians unless they're,
Let's add to that. Trump doesn't care about brown people either. Do you really think that do you honestly think that he cares enough about brown people to save them in Venezuela? Make that make sense.
Hell, I don't care about you. I just want your vote.
He didn't care about brown people living in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico is in the United States.
Exactly. I think, but that's the thing. But that's the point. And it's like, and this is the thing that I'm kind of like, huh? Especially from some Latinos I know, because they're like, oh, I don't agree with how Trump kidnap Maduro, but Maduro had it coming. And maybe I agree with Trump on this. And I'm like,
yeah, you've not been paying attention.
Ago, or even within the last month, you'll be on Trump on account of taking your brothers and sisters from ICE. And now you're giving Trump praise for basically trying to kidnap, regardless of whether you agree with him or not, but illegally kidnap a working president in the guise of, oh, you think it's going to be better for the country? Please.
Hey, Colin, real quick, is there such a thing as legal kidnapping?
When we do it. When it's us.
When we do it.
But I guess when we do it, it's legal kidnapping. It's okay.
My legal advisor has made sure it's okay. It's fine. Look at the fine print.
But
so
it's all right. But when we go back to Africa real quick, sorry about this, Reba.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
But when we talk about Africa, he's going to go after the Sahel region. He's going after the Sahel region. He's going after the Sahel region for a couple of reasons. And the Sahel region, there's 3 countries. It's Mali,
Burkina Faso, Niger. Yeah.
He's going after those 3 countries specifically, and he's starting to set up shop in northern Nigeria because northern Nigeria is the obvious access point to those 3 countries.
Right.
Now, the Sahel region, those 3 countries were formerly part of a Western bloc of African nations called ECOWAS.
Yep.
ECOWAS is full of former French colonies, and I don't know how close
you've been watching the show, Joe. You've been watching the show, huh?
No, I've been busy.
Talked about this extensively.
I've been busy.
So
I've been busy.
This is just, you're just helping. Look, our audience, they got all of this.
Yeah,
so,
they've been keeping up.
So
didn't Burkina Faso just shut down a coup? Like last couple of months ago?
Yesterday. An attempted assassination yesterday or 2 days ago of their leader Ibrahim Traore. And if you also got to remember the other 2 leaders of the countries, it's Abdourahmane Chiani and Assame Goita in Mali. These are all relatively, Chiani's in his mid-60s. Goita is, I think, 44 or 45. Traore's 37 or 38. What does America hate? America hates strong black men who are leaders.
Yeah.
America hates strong black men who are leaders. That's why the establishment, to a certain extent, hated Obama. That's why they hated Martin Luther King Jr. That's why they hated Fred Hampton. That's why they hated Malcolm X. That's because these were strong black men who were leaders.
But not because they were leaders, because they were uncompromised in their principles.
That's
the key.
Well, that's the
Obama. You can argue, you can take him out of the equation.
Yes.
But everyone else, like, they were uncompromised. Like, and they
True.
So both of you were like,
what I think is going to happen with those 3 African leaders. Sorry about this, Roy. I think it's going to happen with those 3 African leaders is they're not going to be quote unquote kidnapped once the United States gets to them.
Oh, no.
They're not going to face that fate. Oh, no. They have one option, and the option, unfortunately, is going to be death.
But you know what?
Because they're going to face the same fate as Thomas Sankara and Patrice Lumumba.
Yep.
Traore is like, if they kill me, they kill me.
Yep.
So,
he knows.
He knows. But I think in part because he studied the ancestors, and I think that's key. Is that if we know our history, we know what we're up against, but we also know potentially in a lot of ways of how we're going to die if we do the right thing. He's not afraid of that at all. He's like, kill me. If it means to save my people, I'd rather be dead. Because, and you know what? His death, assuming what will happen in Burkina Faso, I don't think it's going to have the kind of response that the West might think it's going to have, because they love him in Burkina Faso. So I can imagine a revolution of the greatest degree, which I wish would happen here, but whatever, like, would rise up from that. So try it.
Colin, let me ask you this, Colin. What would that revolution look like in Africa? And that's my phone.
Well, I think in terms of, look, here's the thing, because it's not just related to the Sahel nations, it's basically the whole continent.
Bingo.
It's the whole
one word.
That's the whole world.
Right.
And Africanism.
Right. And especially and I could say this to you, Joe, because we've had this conversation. what we hoped would happen in regards to the NBA strike back in George Floyd.
Yes.
If they unalive Traore, it's going to have that effect, but on the continent.
I hope.
And honestly, in my mind, that will be glorious.
I agree with you. 1000%.
Because especially now, like, not so much the older people and Africans, whatever, but the youth, they are more connected than ever before.
Yes.
They're more on social media than ever before, and they are watching more than ever before.
Absolutely.
Which is why they're ruining that. Like,
right. The slightest thing, there'll be an uprising. And
so
I personally hope that happens to give Black people in the West the example, because you know how like we kind of shit on Africans all the time. Oh, they ain't worth shit. They don't do shit. If that something pops off,
yeah,
all we got to do is watch.
Yep, absolutely.
So I would love to see it personally.
I don't want to see the death of a country's leader. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't want to see the death of an African leader. Let me be careful with my words. I don't want to see the death of any of the African leaders from the Sahel region.
Right.
But understanding that Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Chiani have that sort of ethos about themselves where they're uncompromising. That is America's worst nightmare.
Right.
It's America's worst nightmare. America doesn't want to see that. And quite frankly, France is doing poorly right now because they can no longer exploit Africa. I don't know how close you've been watching, but the French government is still in complete disarray.
Oh, yeah.
and nobody likes Emmanuel Macron. Right. Not the National Front, the right-wing party led by Jordan Bardella, and not the far left party, the France Insoumis party, which is a French word meaning unbound, led by Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Nobody likes him. The common thread between both of those political parties is that they want Emmanuel Macron gone. They want him gone. And the same people that want him gone in France are the same reason why the Sahel region and the remainder of ECOWAS decided to kick all of the French military out of their countries.
Right. Right. And they tried to knock him off, and they were like, no, you tried it, get out. So for right now, it seems to be working. But as I said, if they try it to the point where they succeed, it's not going to be pretty for us. It's not going to be pretty at all. And I think, and one thing that I think, especially in connection with that, BRICS, in a lot of ways, is also involved in this.
Yes.
In terms of the connections that those countries... Now, Reef and I have talked about this. We have our issues with BRICS. And generally, because they're trying to model themselves after the IMF here and the World Bank here. And we're like, no, you shouldn't be modeling yourself after colonialism here. But however, like, given the stake that BRICS has on the continent, they're not going to be too pleased if, like, leaders that they're purposely trying to work with in terms of trade to try to bring into a more multipolar world is knocked out. So very potentially, and we've said this on the show, potentially, if World War III were about to start, it will be based on the continent. It would be based in Africa or Latin America, because one, of the resources, but two, like, there's so many groups that are looking to get those resources that, and there's not that much, that everyone is going to try to fight for. So,
like, I like having both you on International Man of Mystery. You guys see the whole big picture, right? So have either of you played something like Risk, the game of Risk?
Many years ago.
Or
I was
like,
more of a Stratego guy, but I did like Risk.
Grand strategy games.
Stratego was tough with the bombs and the flag.
Yeah.
Stratego was a tough game. I was nice. Trust
So
me.
there's a grand strategy game from Paradox Entertainment, Hearts of Iron, lets you change like World War II history, all that stuff. But essentially the game is a big map. It's like Risk, right? And one of the ways that you can, manipulate this game is through influence systems. You can send influence to other countries, you send a bunch of socialists into America and suddenly you have socialist America in World War II, that kind of thing, right? So this is essentially what Israel's been doing with this Isaac Accords, right? You can see this map of control here, at least in South America. I know they've been doing the same in Africa as well, right? Multiple countries manipulated by NATO and Western powers, but same thing here, right? So you've got Argentina, that's Millet, right? You've got Chile, Bolivia, we talked about that. Peru, we talked about that. They're also controlled. Ecuador, you've got that control, with Bukele and all these peoples out here. So Brazil was the only one that we've talked about that being kind of Lula being a little fucky with that, which is part of the problem with BRICS.
They're going to be after Brazil next.
Yeah, which Lula's already kind of said that he's willing to play ball here. So, that's part of this too. And we've talked about, even with the oil, we've talked about how they've already pretty much said that they'd work with Chevron and whatever. So, to me, that kind of takes this out of the equation. Maduro's already said that he's willing to play ball there. Pretty much to save his own neck and his country's from manipulation, he's being strong-armed. He's like, all right, I'll give you the money here. And they're like, nah, give me all that shit, so we'll see how that goes. Let's go to Vanessa's article real quick. And then we'll get to the stuff about Trinidad. Because they're part of this problem too. Unfortunately, hold on, I'm going back to it. I only had 100 slides that I've already 86 multiple. Where's it at? Here we go. So, friend of the show, Vanessa Beeley, wrote 14 points on this Venezuela thing, right? On the 6th anniversary of the Trump assassination of Haj Qasem Soleimani, by the way, I don't know if they marked that in their calendars, but definitely a bit of circumstance there. But here's what she writes. So the Trump campaign to regain control of Venezuela oil is a remake of the 1953 CIA MI6 coup Operation Ajax in Iran, where they orchestrated the removal of Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, and after he nationalized the Iranian oil industry in 1951. British and U.S. control of Iranian oil supplies was immediately restored when they replaced Mossadegh with the dictatorial Shah. Trump has announced that the U.S. will take back control of their oil interests in Venezuela. Point 1. Venezuela oil industry is not in good shape. Decades of sanctions have deliberately prevented any investment of renovation of the equipment, etc. Venezuela oil is heavy crude, which would need specialized refineries that exist in the so-called U.S. Gulf. It would need an estimated 40 to 50 billion to fully restore the Venezuelan production to pre-sanctioned viability. And I saw that Chevron and the U.S. was willing to subsidize. They're like, we'll pay for it. Give us the oil, we'll pay. So that's where your tax dollars are going to go, but this will take time. There is a potential that ultimately Venezuelan oil will reduce the dominance of Saudi Arabia in the oil market, but not entirely. There is an argument that this is in preparation for a war with Iran to compensate for any Iranian closure of the Hormuz Straits, but this means that the war is not imminent because Venezuela is far from being a done deal. The preferred option for Zionists in the U.S. is to continue a hybrid war against Iran, sanctions, and fomenting internal conflicts and clashes. Perhaps deploying Takfiri proxies in Iran. However, a clear message has been sent to Iran. The kidnapping of Maduro and his wife took place on the anniversary of Trump's assassination of Soleimani. The message being that decapitation of leadership is an ongoing threat to stability in any country that opposes global hegemony. Both Russia and China have significant interests in the Venezuelan oil industry. Ian Millall writes, Beijing holds roughly $19 to $20 billion in loans to Venezuela tied to oil for loan deals. A new U.S.-installed government can simply declare those debts illegitimate and refuse to pay them. Venezuela was also China's most reliable partner in the region for energy and military cooperation. Chinese refineries are built for Venezuelan heavy crude. A U.S. naval blockade and a chance in government mean that oil will likely move through Western markets, likely cutting China out. China has multiple projects in Latin America to sideline U.S. dominance in their own backyard. The Nicaraguan Grand Canal, to rival the Panama Canal, has stalled to economic, environment, and political hurdles. The Brazil-Peru bi-oceanic corridor, a rail and port system connecting Brazil's Atlantic coast with Peru's Pacific coast, significantly reducing transit times and costs. The Colombia Dry Channel, a proposed railway linking Colombia's Pacific port of Buenaventura to the Atlantic, offering a rail-based alternative. And this is all similar to like things in, the Middle East as well, the Belt and Road Initiative, all that stuff, right? We've talked about that as well. Removing Venezuela from the occasion for both China and Russia will seriously impact on their strategic footprint in Latin America. China more than Russia is a clear strategy by the U.S. to weaken or even entirely block China's expansion into what they consider to be America's backyard. It is also clearly perceived as a precursor to destabilization in Cuba, Colombia, and Brazil, with the Zionic-Isaac Accords already poisoning the Latin America well in Argentina, Costa Rica, Panama, and Uruguay. The U.S. is ensuring the rise of right-wing regimes in the region, most recently in Honduras. Fee pointed out the timing of the Chinese delegation to Venezuela is of interest. Were they trying to protect their interest in the knowledge that U.S. was planning to retake control? The fact that it appears no man-pad missiles were fired at the incoming helicopters and drones, and no shots were fired to prevent the extraction of the president is very troubling. Very similar to what we saw in Syria. So, as happened in Iran during the first 24 hours of the Zionist aggression in June 2025, that does not answer why there was no hand-to-hand combat in the palace itself, and there appears to be no protection surrounding the president. This is all conjecture, which will be modified as more facts come to light. We'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, Trump said when he was asked how controlling Venezuela's energy supply could impact relations with them. We're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We have seen this pragmatic approach being rolled out in Syria with the almost immediate normalization with the al-Qaeda regime put in place by Turkey, Israel, and the U.S. axis of terror. Ian Millall also pointed out that Trump operation will perhaps embolden comparable actions from Russia and China. Dozens of Chinese ships sit near Taiwan. Aircraft cross into this air defense zone almost daily. Drills practice blockades and landings. Beijing now has the political language and the operational blueprint to move regional stability, restoring order, an illegitimate regime, and national security. Former British diplomat and West Asia specialist Alistair Crook has argued the U.S. national finances are in very bad shape, and this is leading to Trump's seizure of global resources to prevent the collapse of the U.S. dollar. This could certainly be one factor in the White House Pentagon calculation. In Vanessa's opinion, the costs involved in the resource grab operations will offset any benefits, thus, this will only delay the U.S. financial juggernaut hitting the barriers. The protests on the streets of Venezuela and the powerful statement by acting President Delcy Rodriguez point to the possibility of a popular 2002 Chavez-style push to have Maduro released and returned to Venezuela as president. Many believe that Trump's inherent narcissism will not permit such a concession from the U.S. What is for sure, however, the operation was carried out. Whoever supported it and endorsed it behind closed doors, the Venezuela people will pay the ultimate price for the incoming instability and insecurity that comes with colonization and the capture of resources by a predatory entity. Hala Jabbar wrote this morning, Venezuela feels like Iraq all over again. Invade, disrupt, install, no international mandate, no accountability, no thought for the chaos and violence left behind, civil strife, migration waves, proxy blowback. This is regime change by force. And once again, There's no plan for what happens next. Empire disrupts, it seizes, it stages photo ops and calls it peace, then it abandons the wreckage. The worst consequences are likely yet to come. So great stuff from Vanessa. Any thoughts, boys?
Nah, we've talked enough about Venezuela.
Yeah.
I just wish that my friends who are on the right would take a look at this Venezuela situation and be as upset as I am about it. Not necessarily for the same reasons, because we're different people, but when you have a sitting president of the United States that says, we're going to take all the oil, we're going to take all the oil from the country, and we're going to make Venezuela great again. How is making Venezuela great again doing anything for making America great again?
Right. Right.
That's all I want to know from my friends on the right.
We can't even take care of our own, much
we
less.
can't even fix our own problems.
Right.
There's an old adage, the plumber's house is usually the first to flood. And here we are. We're worried about eating off of somebody else's plate when we can't even fix our own. It's ridiculous.
And you know what? We're in an election year. I don't think this is going to go, and I feel like Republicans know it. This is not going to go as well as they are trying to have you believe. Because I forgot where I saw this from, but I guess the number one news story that occurred this past year was inflation.
Yes.
That has been the most significant story that was peaked pretty much consistently.
Cost of living, yeah, of course.
Right. So you're talking about saving Venezuela. Meanwhile, at home, people now, and you, Joe, you can speak on this a little bit more than me, but like the ACA subsidies expired today.
Yep, gone.
People are going to have been complaining about healthcare costs going up. People have and will continue to complain about food going up. People are going to continue to complain about housing going up, public transportation going up, and no relief in sight. And I felt like I said this a lot last year, like the damage is coming. And I feel like we're just about there, to the point where people are seeing money going out the door for Israel, money going out the door for Argentina, potentially money going out the door for Venezuela. Meanwhile, when it comes to our folks at home, oh no, we can't give you anything.
Uh-huh.
Like,
we can't give you Medicare.
I think they're going to try and spin it, but for the regular schmegular people, they're not going to go for it.
Nope.
And they're going to be very angry.
Nope.
So they're going to, and they know it. They're going to be like, well, just get done what we want to get done and get enough damage in. And then maybe the Democrats, assuming they come into power over the next few years, maybe will try and maybe will clean up the mess. You know, they won't, or very minimally that it will be insignificant, and we'll just continue to rot.
Yeah. And America's cooked. We are so cooked. This country is so cooked. We are fried, broiled, boiled, baked, flambéed, roasted, toasted. This country is done. We are so done in this country. My gosh. I know we got a lot to go on to. Let's hit the next topic.
We're getting our way through it.
We say Venezuela is in trouble, potentially. The U.S. is in trouble, but no one's going to talk about Trinidad.
No,
and I think
we're going to.
We're going to. And
Camilla Press, the United States proceeded to close Caribbean airspace to carry out its terror attacks while utilizing military bases all around the region, and few are contesting this. Camilla, we're here. Shout out us, and we're going to do that right now. So You brought this, Care Bear, correct?
Right. So
let's do this.
So we've talked a bit about Trinidad in preparation for you coming. So audience is well versed in what's going on, but we're just going to give a brief review in terms of as to why Venezuela is where it is right now. Because as we reported, that Trinidad has allowed the U.S. military to set up shop on the island as a
means, both of them, Trinidad and Tobago, yes,
as a means to infiltrate Venezuela, which is literally right there, like 7 miles away at its closest point.
Correct.
So,
Point Fortin.
Right. So let's play this clip and we'll get into it.
We'll get into it. Absolutely.
I can't hear Reef. Sorry.
It's all right. I just forgot to hit buttons.
Over 15,000 U.S. Marines have now arrived near Venezuela, and what's happening in the Caribbean looks like the biggest military buildup since Iraq. Right now, Trinidad and Tobago, just off Venezuela's coast, has turned into a full-blown military zone. Fresh U.S. troops are landing, a new naval fleet has joined the region, and reports say hidden aircraft, possibly bombers, are being stationed nearby. Meanwhile, the airspace above Puerto Rico has been completely shut down under national defense protocol. And this, it's no ordinary runway. It's a hot fuel strip, meaning fighter jets can refuel without ever shutting their engines off, ready for instant missions. But here's where it gets even more serious. GPS interference off Venezuela is now at an all-time high. 2 U.S. aircraft carriers are already in position, and a third one is on the way. In the skies, B-1 and B-2 bombers are moving closer, forming what experts call one of the largest strike packages since World War II. Still, despite this massive buildup, both Trump and Marco Rubio insist there is no plan to attack Venezuela. But with 10 million Venezuelan reservists reportedly ready to defend their homeland, many believe we're standing at the edge of something far bigger than anyone's admitting. Follow now for real-time updates. Breaking news. Over 15,000...
No.
So this was produced, I believe, in October.
Yeah.
So we're there already. So I forget whether you or I brought this story, Joe, but I don't think we mentioned it. So I think it's worth talking about. This is from Al Jazeera. So again, this is all taking place in the fall.
Yep.
So Venezuela suspends Trinidad and Tobago's gas accord over U.S. warship visits. So as a result of, and we'll get into this later with Trinidad's prime minister, because they allowed the U.S. to set up shop, Venezuela's like, we're cutting you off of your gas. So Caracas asserts that U.S. actions in the Caribbean are a military threat and are meant to steal its oil and gas wealth. So Linda Rowlands, and I guess she pulled this article from other news agencies. She continues, Venezuela has suspended a major gas deal with neighboring Trinidad and Tobago, citing the island nation's reception of a United States warship. President Nicolas Maduro ordered the immediate suspension of a deal to provide natural gas to Trinidad and Tobago, state broadcaster Tel Sur reported on Monday. The island is hosting one of several U.S. ships deployed near Venezuelan waters by President Donald Trump's administration. Venezuelan officials have accused the U.S. president of seeking regime change. Canceling the gas deal, Maduro accused Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissar of transferring the Caribbean nation into an aircraft carrier of the American empire against Venezuela. Trinidad and Tobago ran out of gas before Venezuela had agreed to help it with the deal, Maduro asserted. Persad-Bissar pushed back, telling Trinidad and Tobago's Newsday newspaper that the country's future does not depend on Venezuela and never had.
Wow.
Okay. She added that her government has been moving away from reliance of the long-delayed joint Dragon gas field, which sits in Venezuelan waters near Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
The last government mistakenly placed all their hopes in the Dragon project. We have not done so, Persad-Bissar said. This means that the government is not susceptible to any blackmail from the Venezuelans for political support, she asserted. However, she denied that there are rising tensions between the two countries, which are separated by a small bay just 11 kilometers or 7 miles wide at its narrowest point. The USS Gravely, a guided missile destroyer, arrived on Sunday in the Trinidadian capital, Port of Spain, with U.S. Marines on board before planned joint military exercises. Venezuelan authorities described Trinidad's decision to host the ship as a provocation. The United Nations government has stressed that joint exercises with the U.S. happen regularly. Since September, the Trump administration has launched 10 strikes against vessels in the region that it alleges were carrying drugs, killing at least 43 people. Many Latin American and Caribbean leaders have compared the strikes to extrajudicial killings. However, Bisadar has sponsored the U.S. campaign, saying she'll rather see drug traffickers blown to bits than have them kill citizens of her nation. Venezuela argues that the attacks are aimed at allowing external powers to rob Venezuela's immediate oil and gas wealth. Foreign Minister Ivan Gil Pinto told the United Nations General Assembly on Monday that the U.S. has an illegal and completely immoral military threat hanging over their heads. Several senior officers have accused the U.S. of using false claims of a war against drugs to prepare a bid to oust Maduro's government, which earned international problemium last year as it won elections branded neither free or fair, as if America has free or fair elections here. But I digress. Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago first agreed to jointly drill for gas in 2018. However, the project has been long delayed and complicated by U.S. sanctions on Venezuela. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said last month that the U.S. supports the Trinidad's government Dragon gas proposal, but it would take steps to ensure it will not provide significant benefit to Maduro's government. The license on the field permits the British multinational oil and gas company Shell and Trinidad's national gas company to develop the Dragon gas field off Venezuela, despite the sanctions targeted Maduro's government. Shell is separately developing the Manatee gas project, which crosses the maritime border into Venezuela, but has received permission from the Maduro government to be developed on the Trinidadian side independently. It was not immediately clear whether that project could also be at risk, the Reuters news agency reported. Trinidad and Tobago is relying on gas for 92.6% of its energy needs, with the remaining 7.3% provided by oil products, according to the International Energy Agency. Renewable resources such as wind and solar provide 0.02% of the island's nation energy, according to the IEA, well below other countries in the region. Wow. So actually, I want to talk a little bit more about that because I feel that's very significant. But what are your thoughts?
Sorry,
Joe. My thoughts on the whole Trinidad and Venezuela situation, or the lack of diversity within the economy in Trinidad?
Let's talk about the former first. We'll get into the latter in a minute.
This entire situation should have been avoided. Now, most people don't understand what has happened with Trinidad and Tobago over the past 12 months. Trinidad and Tobago has had 3 different prime ministers in the past 12 months. The previously elected prime minister is Dr. Keith Rowley. Now, let me go ahead and set this up. There are 2 political parties in Trinidad. You have the People's National Movement, PNM, and then you have UNC, the United National Congress, UNC. So you have UNC, PNM. Now, the previous prime minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, he's, I think, in his early 70s. He is a volcanologist by trade. That's what he did. He studied volcanoes, and he was really good with petroleum and energy. And he became a politician and was elected prime minister of the country a little bit more than 6 years ago. Now, he decided, and I'm going to use a word that you don't often hear in politics, but it's appropriate here. He demitted his position. Yes. So when you are in a parliamentary system of government and the prime minister resigns, the technical term you're supposed to use is demit. So Dr. Keith demitted his position. In a parliamentary system of government, the person who is second in command assumes the prime ministership. So the second in command in the PNM party was a man of Chindian descent, part Chinese and part Eastern Indian, named Stuart Young. Stuart Young. He is from Trinidad, Port of Spain, Trinidad. In fact, I think he was the Minister of Parliament in the St. Anne's region of Port of Spain, Trinidad. If you are familiar with the Queen's Park Savannah, which is the large open air space in the middle of Port of Spain, Trinidad. It has a large road around it. It is the world's largest roundabout. St. Anne's is the neighborhood going up the hill to past the Hilton Hotel on the right, which is a gorgeous hotel going up in that area. So he was the Minister of Parliament for St. Anne's. He assumed the prime ministership on March 17th, which is a special day because that's my birthday. So he became the prime minister of the country on March 17 of 2025. A snap election was called. And many people in Trinidad did not think that Kamala Prasad Bisesar, who was the previously elected prime minister before Dr. Keith Rowley, was going to win, because many people thought Stuart Young was going to win. KPB won. Kamala Prasad Bisesar won the prime ministership. Now, we've seen situations like this in other countries where you have a leader of a country in a parliamentary system that demits his or her position, and there is a snap election. This also happened in Canada not too long ago, when Justin Trudeau decided to resign, and then the leader of the Liberal Democrats was Mark Carney. There are also 3 other political parties in Canada, and I used to live in Canada, so that's how I know about Canada so much. You had the conservative leader named Pierre Poilievre. You had the leader of the NDP, the New Democratic Party, named Jagmeet Singh, who's a man of who's a Sikh member of the Sikh community. And then you had the leader of the Green Party. Her name was Elizabeth May. And I don't think the Green Party had enough votes or enough seats in Parliament to warrant anybody voting for them in a general election. So the Liberal Democrats said Mark Carney ended up winning the prime ministership. Now, normally when you have this type of election, this parliamentary election, if you're a member of parliament, you still have to compete for your seat in the parliament. You still have to compete for your seat. Not only did Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh lose their opportunity to become Prime Minister of Canada, they also lost their seats in the Canadian Parliament. So neither Pierre Poilievre nor Jagmeet Singh are members of the Parliament right now. They're completely out of government. Let's go back to Trinidad. And so in Trinidad, with Stuart Young, who is now assumed the head of the PNM, the People's National Movement, and went against Kamala Prasad Bisesar, KPB, and the UNC party. KPB won. Stuart Young lost his seat in Parliament. Stuart Young is no longer in government. And the previous Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, is sitting in his palatial estates, probably somewhere in Tobago, chilling out. And happy retirement to him. The country has gone through several what's called states of emergency over the past year because of gang violence due to drugs. And the states of emergency last for 14 days. And these states of emergencies give the police in Trinidad and Tobago complete impunity to do really whatever they want. Whatever they want, anytime they want. So if they pull you over, they can go through your stuff you go through your property without any sort of questions or answers. Nothing. They don't have to ask any questions because it's a state of emergency. And these states of emergencies that consistently happen, and they last for 14 days, but they can be renewed, I think, up to 90 days. So these states of emergencies have been happening in Trinidad. There's been several of them in Trinidad over the past year. And these states of emergencies are an obvious failure of leadership, regardless of political party, because because anytime that you constantly have states of emergencies, the crisis of leadership becomes more apparent, and it becomes an obvious guilty plea of a government that is not only unstable but incompetent. And that's what we've seen from to a certain extent, the previous administration, but we're certainly seeing it from the Kamala Prasad Bisesar administration. Now, what she decided to do was go against the collective activism and regional solidarity of a group of Caribbean nations called CARICOM. She decided to go against CARICOM, and unilaterally, she chose American imperialism over regional solidarity.
Right.
That's what Kamala Prasad Bisesar did. And number one, it's shameful that she did that, considering that she is a lifelong Trinidad and Tobago resident, and she was born on in those islands when those islands weren't independent countries. They were colonies of England until August 31st, 1962. And they still had the Queen Elizabeth II as the head of the figurehead head of state until August 1, 1976. Kamala Prasad Bisesar was around for all of that. She should know better. But at the same time, from a political perspective, if she goes against the whims of the United States and decides to side with Venezuela, then she was looking from a political calculus, she could potentially be looking at Trinidad being next on the list, because Trinidad, one of their biggest natural resources is oil, massive oil deposits in Trinidad and Tobago. On top of that, if you know anything, and I had to learn this recently because of what's happening with Venezuela and all of the oil refineries, the heavy crude oil refineries that are along the Gulf shores of Texas. If, full disclosure, I fly United Airlines a lot. And when I fly to Trinidad, I fly United Airlines. United Airlines only goes through one airport in the United States, and it's Houston, Texas.
Right.
I can't tell you how many people I sit next to on these flights from George Bush International Airport to Piarco Airport in Trinidad, Port of Spain, Trinidad, who are oil executives or work for these oil companies in and around the Houston metropolitan area.
Yep.
It happens all the time. I can't.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
There's Trinidad needs to diversify its economy by a lot. There's no reason why Trinidad should have shifted to solar power a long time ago.
Right.
There's a ton of sun in that country. Tons of it, especially at the beaches. How solar power is only what? 0.2% of the energy consumption in that country is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We have Trinidad has the world's largest lake of asphalt. It's called Pitch Lake, and it's owned by China.
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
But every time there's a hard rain in downtown in Trinidad, the streets of downtown Port of Spain flood. Richmond Street, Observatory Street, Charlotte Street, a street that I know quite well, Argyle Street, up on the hill in Belmont. These streets flood because they can't fix the roads or the infrastructure. So what we're seeing right now is the new 21st century brand of colonialism. But Kamala Prasad Bisesar, again, decided to take the easy way out and not side with Mia Mottley and the other leaders of the Caribbean nations. And she chose to side with the U.S. dictatorship as opposed to leaders of other Caribbean countries that know what the hell they're doing. I would be quite happy if tomorrow Kamala Prasad Bisesar tendered her resignation to the country, because all we've heard from KPB is lies. We've heard lies from her. We've heard lies from her Minister of Homeland Security, a guy named Roger Alexander. We've heard lies from the Minister of Defense, a guy named Wayne Sturge. Months ago, we heard, oh, well, the U.S. isn't setting up bases. They're just doing routine activities in the area. A couple months later, well, why is there radar set up at Piarco Airport in just outside of Port of Spain, Trinidad? And why are there radar at the airport in Tobago named after A.N.R. Robinson, who was, I think, the first prime minister? He was the first Tobagonian to become prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Why are there radar set up on Trinidad and Tobago? All we heard was lies. Oh, well, it's just the United States setting up and running routine tests for their equipment in Trinidad.
Why the fuck you lying?
Right? And then
why you always lying?
And then all we heard was, well, they're attacking these boats in the middle of the South Atlantic Sea and that body of water between between Venezuela and Trinidad called the Gulf of Paria, where there's a lot of oil fields in those areas also. Why are they setting up radar in these areas? Why are these boats going after these areas? Oh, well, and then KPB said, oh, well, it's because the United States wants to help eliminate drug traffickers that are coming in from Venezuela, knowing full well that Trinidad already had radar designed to intercept these boats that were coming from Venezuela and other South American countries. So all we've heard is lies from this KPB, this Kamala Prasad Bissessar administration. We've heard lies from her. We've heard lies from the defense secretary. We've heard lies from Roger Alexander, who I don't think knows what the hell he's doing. That's all we've heard is lies, lies, lies. Every time KPB opens her mouth, it's lies. It's no different than when Caroline Leavitt gets in front of the camera in the White House and starts talking. Everything is a lie. And right now, Trinidad is in dire straits. There's a foreign exchange issue, a foreign exchange problem in Trinidad. The economy is in tatters. The job market is terrible in Trinidad right now. And then we have KPB that refuses to diversify the economy in the country. We have KPB that thinks that America gives a shit about two tiny islands in the Southern Caribbean that are known for roti, pilori, steel drums, Billy Ocean. And Nicki Minaj, who decided to whore herself out to America first. I'm sorry. What's the organization that Charlie Kirk used to run? What's that called again?
Turning Point.
Turning Point. And decided to whore herself out to Turning Point. It's ridiculous what's happening in a country that I care about deeply, that I have obvious connections to and roots to, because most of my extended family still live there.
Well,
and people are stressed out in this country because they're worried about what KPB is going to say over and over again at the United Nations. They're worried about every single press conference. It's another set of lies.
You ready for the lies? You ready for them?
Let's hear
it. With you. There are a lot of concerns. Now is not the time, maybe, but I will not go into depth. Minister of National Security, Homeland Security, Minister of Defense, AG. And there are concerns about what's happening in our region. And I ask you, let not your hearts be troubled. Do not fear, because Kamala is here. Do not fear. Do not fear.
He was up all night thinking about that.
And while you're worrying about the radar, I want you to know every one of you is on my radar. Every one of you is on my radar because I'm looking out for you. So you worry about radar and you worry about Venezuela. Don't worry. And I'll tell you something, you know. I think it's the height of hypocrisy and unkindness that there are people in our country who want to fight the Americans. Tonight, I say it again, I stand in bilateral relationships with the United States of America. They are amongst our oldest trading partners, one. They are our largest trading partner in terms of millions of dollars trade between us. With Venezuela, we have 0.000 trade. With the United States, Minister of Trade, are you here? Kennedy, you may know. Billions of dollars in trade. And you know something else? I don't think people know this. Over 350,000 Trinidadians and Tobagonians hold U.S. visas. Over 350,000 Trinidadian Tobagonians hold what? A U.S. visa. Why? Because people like to go and visit the United States. How many of you going to other parts of the world? I won't name where. Over
Israel.
300, Philip, did you know that? I checked and I found out. Over 350,000 Trinidadians. And they use this visa not to travel once, but they use it multiple times. Several times some people travel. So why are you bad-mouthing the people? You want to go in the people country, but you want to bad-mouth them.
Yes.
Isn't that hypocrisy?
Stupid.
From
No.
some? And careful, you don't end up like Antigua and Barbuda and Dominica, who bad-mouthed in the U.S., and guess what happened? All their visas restricted now. They've cut their visas. Which Trini wants to cut their visas, so behave yourself. understand
Fuck
where
you,
our help
lady.
comes from, understand who could protect and defend Trinidad and Tobago. Right now, there's only one country in the world can do it. They have the money, they have the equipment, they have the assets. And Trinidad and Tobago first. I thought I would share that with you, but it goes further. Over 250,000 Trinis live in the United States. You understand? 250,000 Trinis regularized across there live there. And right here in Trinidad, apart from the 350,000 holding US visas, you have about 20,000 Trinis who are dual citizens, meaning US and Trinidad and Tobago. So what's the problem? So it's all well and good to take the people visa and go up Florida and shop and go wherever and shop. No. Huh? So just leave the people alone. Leave them alone.
Them first?
Because I don't want a single Trini or Tobagonian to lose their US visa. If it happens, it won't be because of me. We remain in partnership with the United States of America. So let's live with that. And let's continue to prosper together. So if anybody comes to attack Trinidad and Tobago, whom you think will stand up to defend us? I know Phyllis once said, India will come. India not coming here, child. Not coming here.
How do your people call it? Ignorant? That bitch ignorant? Isn't that how this works?
I can't stand a stupid BS. I can't stand a stupid
Again.
KPB is incompetent yet charming. And she's charming because she reminds me of so many of my older family members.
Yes.
She reminds me of my cousins.
Yes.
She reminds me of my cousin Sharon. She reminds me of my cousin Siobhan. Rest in peace, Siobhan. She reminds me of my Aunt Gloria. Rest in peace, Gloria. She reminds me of the most elegant woman I've ever met, my beloved grandmother, Elaine McKechnie Anderson. She reminds me of her. My God, it's you listen to her talk, and
it's home.
It's standard.
Home. And listen
politician.
To her say, it's Trini, and listen to her talk. She's saying, behave yourself. Could you imagine the leader of a country telling their body politic, behave yourself, because the U.S. is watching, and we want to make sure we're good girls and boys for the United States of America. That is what. And I'm going to use a Trini term, Reef. You wouldn't know about this. All right. Collin, you know what word I'm going to say next. That is what Tanti Kamla just told the world. Okay. That is what Tanti Kamla just told the world. She just told the world that we Trinis and Tobagonians are going to be good little boys and girls. United States, imperialist and hyper-capitalist and colonialist regime.
Shout out to Bad Cookies who said, tell me this lady isn't a CIA plant without telling me she's a CIA plant.
That's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. Then again, typically CIA plants don't get reelected to the prime ministership of countries that the CIA wants to invade or exploit.
True.
So she was the previous prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago before Dr. Keith Rowley took over. Dr. Keith demitted his position. Stuart Young was around for about a month and a half, and then KPB took over, and she's there for realistically another 4 years and about 9 or 10 months. It's a 5-year presidential term in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. I do want to play this. So actually, we'll skip around a little bit, Reef, but let's go to the next one on 62. So
I think the 21. Yes. I think I'm on 62.
So
yeah.
So I want to play this for you. I think I might send this to you, but I think this will kind of go into the latter part of what you were wanting to talk about in terms of how codependent the Trinidad is on the U.S.
Yes.
And how, Trinidad really, and it's funny because, God, I hear my father especially and my mother say this all the time. you know, and I'm sure you know, but like the idea of like Trinidad could be doing a lot more for itself, given that it has the resources to be independent apart of the West in that regard. And they basically, as my dad says, all Trinis like to do is party. Like, you know, all they do talk about is carnival and party.
Time to go. I'm out. Let's go. I'm getting on the plane.
You know, and I mean, it's kind of stereotypical, but it kind of alluded to what KGB said regarding visas. It's like all we want to do, all Trinis want to do is like go into the world, have fun, and not develop the infrastructure that I hear my father like saying this right now, you know. But I want to show you this young man who is a part of the Trinidad Empowerment Network. So for those in the chat, when he says 10, that's what he's referring to, the community base within his YouTube channel. I think his name is Nigel. So he kind of brings up basically his disdain as well for your prime minister, but also I think talking about more into the codependency that Trinidad has for the for the United States, and how, you know, they're not being good stewards of the resources that they have. So you probably want to speed this up, Reef, because it's a little long. So
yes, sir. Can do
like half speed, or at least twice the speed. So
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
All right, what's good, everyone? It's Nigel here, Trinidad Empowerment Network. So what you just saw there was the Prime Minister of Trinidad.
Yeah, I got it a little too fast.
And I'm going to try and stay calm and honest, because inside I am not, after watching that, after having to witness that. But I'm going to try and stay calm, Ten, because what we are witnessing right now is not leadership. It is exposure. It is exposure, because the Prime Minister has gone on record now, as you just saw, telling the population to behave yourself, warning about US visas, and declaring that only one country can save us, one country can protect us, defend us, and that is the United States. So let's dissect all of this. And before I do so, I want you to like and subscribe to Trinidad Empowerment Network. So that statement alone tells you everything you need to know about the state of our leadership in Trinidad and Tobago. So let's start with trade, Ten, because for me, this is where the story begins to unravel. So of course, let's talk about some of the few things that were factual that the Prime Minister said in that address. Yes, the United States is Trinidad and Tobago's largest trading partner. And that's a fact. It's a fact that nobody can dispute. But let me
hint of British in there I can detect, but
tell you why.
It's not even a hint of British. He's obviously British. You could hear it. And you can also tell it's British because of the decor in the
decor,
the house. Trinidadians don't look like that.
Okay.
Number one. And number two, there's something plainly obvious to let everybody know that Nigel is British. Not just his accent. What do you think it is? Look at the decor.
Sure. I'm looking. Right. We got Malcolm. We got Crimbus Tree. We got what am I missing? I'm missing something.
Look above below the TV. It's a fireplace, guys.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense. In the Caribbean. Yeah, that works. You know, like.
Although I saw a fireplace in Uganda, but granted, it was white people who built it in. So and they lived in California. So it's possible, but
and his accent, it's not just British. It's sounding. It's quite London. You can.
It's like wind. It's like Windrush, Caribbean, in it, bruv, like that whole jazz. But anyway.
What the public is not being told is how that trade actually works. So the PM is being disingenuous. Now, Trinidad exports raw crude oil and natural gas to the United States. We then import refined fuel, finished goods, food, machinery, and consumer products at a higher price than what we sold the raw resources, the raw products for. Now, Ten, that is not economic strength. That is.
So I've mentioned this before. In terms of what happens
Africana.
in Africa,
Yep.
Yeah, because this is the bullshit that the West does in the global South. They take your resources, first of all, for a certain amount, develop them into whatever they want, and then sell it back to you for 5 times the price, given that the resources came from your land. Does that make any sense?
Nope.
So people in the global south are buying the shit that belongs to them or has been taken from their earth.
American bullshit.
And paying exorbitant amounts of money just to, and it's basic stuff. It's not even like, luxury items. It's more or less food, clothes, like the basic things that people need, are more exorbitant. That's why I remember, like, when I was growing up, my auntie, like, basically every time my mom, got her paycheck, Joe, you know this.
I know what you're saying next.
You know this. Like, you're required to send shit home.
Okay.
You're required to send shit home because that happens now. Like, every time I go to Barbados and my dad happens to be there, he expects me to bring stuff for him from here. Funny enough, he kind of badmouths this country at the same time, but yeah, he'll take their shit though, because everything in Barbados is
super
twice,
expensive.
if not 3 times the price of what you're buying in the US. Capitalism. Like, every single time.
I gotta ask you this question. Ask you this question, Colin.
Yeah.
When you were younger, did your parents ever send a barrel over?
My dad, Joe.
Yes.
My dad was a shipping agent.
Good. There he is. Done deal. Done deal.
All I saw growing up was that was his business.
The big barrel.
Shipping. Yep. But it was necessary because there's a way to send stuff that would otherwise be more expensive or hard to get, can get it in the Caribbean,
like
from the UK or the States. That's what you did.
You just did it.
So yes, I grew up with barrels basically all my childhood. Like, and going with my dad to whatever warehouse.
Yep.
Like, for him to pack the barrels in order to ship it.
And you had to, and your pops used to Tetris that barrel real tight with everything.
Yes.
Boy.
Yes.
What's in there? What's in that barrel? What are we sending?
You had to latch it and then roll the duct tape around it to make sure it's sealed tight. And then you put 3 or 4 mailing labels on it just to make sure nothing got ripped off. Right. Then you duct tape the label with a piece of, oh boy.
So basically, to answer your question, whatever you can think.
Whatever you want.
Think of it like a cylinder trunk, basically, that you ship overseas. So basically, whatever you want to ship to your family in the Caribbean, that's what you stuff it in. And someone like my dad will be responsible to ensure that it gets to the right, at the time, the docks in London, to be shipped to, or later on by plane, to the Caribbean. So, yes.
What? Sorry.
Yes,
pulling up the Grace Jones.
Grace Jones. I mean, you want me to do
Jamaican man.
You want me to do Doechii instead? I can do that if you want.
Please no. Let's keep it Grace Jones. Or if you're gonna play an artist from Trinidad, please either play the Mighty Sparrow, Chris Garcia, the great David Rudder.
Yeah,
I'm good friends with his son Khafra, or maybe the Trinidad's greatest musical export, the Mighty Sparrow.
Right.
Or
I mean, I'll pull up the calypso if you want me to. I don't care.
Or the greatest recent Caribbean Trinidadian export musically, the great Leslie Sebastian Charles.
Okay.
You know him as Billy Ocean.
Just send this list, a whole list to me. I will take it happily.
You know him as Billy Ocean.
Get
out of my dreams and into my car, Caribbean Queen. Suddenly.
But anyway,
the love was just a fairy tale. Let me stop.
I could love every bit of it, dude.
I think that the idea, and I said this on the show before, is the idea, again, this is kind of like the subtle exploitation, not subtle, but like the over exploitation of the West to the global South in terms of you take their resources, you manufacture them, probably not even in the West, in China. Some bullshit is that, and then send it back, or if people want it, you resell it for twice, 3, 4, 5, 10 times the price of what it would be if people were able to manufacture it themselves in their home countries.
Exactly.
So,
one of the biggest problems that Trinidad has right now is not only the oil and gas and their inability to produce their own oil and gas, but a lot of, get ready for this, beef and poultry. Beef and poultry gets imported with all of the land that goes unused in Trinidad. How is there not a thriving poultry industry?
Right.
How is there not a thriving beef industry in that country?
Right.
Could you imagine if Trinidad got its stuff together and said, we're going to have a nationalized poultry brand?
Oh no, we can't do that.
Can't do that.
You can't do that.
Korea can do that, but you know, like
we can't do that in Trinidad because we're
All
more worried about how good the rum punch is going to be on Carnival as opposed to actually making sure that people have good jobs. We're more worried about that.
Right.
We're worried if that Pelori is going to be cold by the time you drive home in the maxi taxi.
Anyway, let's go back into what Nigel
extractive dependency. So when you look at the actual numbers, Trinidad runs at a goods trade deficit with the United States. We run at a deficit with the United States. More physical goods come into Trinidad from the United States than leaves Trinidad for the United States. We buy more from them than we sell to them. So when politicians speak about largest trading partner, as if it automatically means prosperity, they are being selective with the truth. And that is what you just saw from the PM. Trade volume does not equal trade power. I hope I've made that bit clear. Now let's talk about food, because I talk about this here a lot on 10. Let's talk about food, because this is one of the most dangerous vulnerabilities we have. A country that cannot feed itself, well, it's a national travesty. Trinidad imports a huge portion of its food supply from the United States, and a significant share of those imports, as you know, comes directly from the United States. Now, that is not because we can't grow food in Trinidad and Tobago. As you know, our climate is sufficient. It's simply because we choose not to. We have a climate advantage in the Caribbean and Trinidad. We have labor. We have the knowledge. What we do not have, 10, is the political will. And that is what is destroying us. And that's not just the UNC. That has gone on for years, and previous governments as well. Decades of neglect have turned a food-capable country into a food-dependent one. That is not America's fault, I must say. It clearly is not America's. That is ours. That is the fault of Trinidad and Tobago's government, past and present. Now let's address the Venezuela claim she made, because this is where the hypocrisy for me becomes clearly obvious. Now, you heard the Prime Minister say, that trade with Venezuela is 0.0003%. What she did not say, and this is where you have to read between the lines here, 10. What she didn't say is why. Now, that figure exists, 10, because Venezuela is under heavy U.S. sanction and have been for a very long time. Heavy U.S. sanction. What does that mean? Sanctions restrict who Venezuela can sell oil and gas to, as you know. Who can refine it, as you know, and who can legally trade with them. That's the sanction America's put on them. So this is why formal trade numbers are tiny. Not because Venezuela lacks the natural resources, as we know, they don't. And not because regional corporation lacks value. It's because of the sanction, the power of the United States, the sanction they placed on them. So in fact, the energy cooperation potential between Trinidad and Venezuela is worth billions, potentially, if it were not restricted by external powers, the United States. And that is the bitter irony of this situation, 10. So I want to be very clear here. We are told we must rely on the United States, as you saw there from the Prime Minister, while simultaneously being restricted from trading freely with our closest energy neighbor, Venezuela. Whether we like them or not, geographically, they are our neighbor. Now, 10, this is not sovereignty. It's not sovereignty for us. It's not sovereignty for Venezuela. This is essentially managed dependence. We are dependent. They are, America, essentially our parents. Now, let's deal with the visa argument, because this one is particularly insulting to me. This one frustrated me. Now, the Prime Minister cited 350,000 Trinidadian with US visas and framed this as people who like to travel, because we like to travel is what she said. Oh my gosh. Let me say this plainly, because this one really got to me.
But a US visa. Why? Because people like to go and visit the United States. How many of you going to other parts of the world? I won't name where. Over 300, Philip, did you know that? I checked and I found out over 350,000 trainees. And
That is either delusional or deliberately misleading. It's either delusional or deliberately misleading. Most people do not obtain US visas because holidays are affordable or attractive in the United States. Traveling to Orlando, Florida is not affordable for a Trinidadian, most Trinidadian. People obtain US visas because wages at home are insufficient. Opportunities are limited. Systems are failing, and survival often requires migration. That is not a flex. That is not something.
Our parents.
Mm-hmm. And we can speak on this because our parents are we are both first generation descendants of Windrush immigrants. We both are. Because you were born in England just like me. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And we both have Caribbean parents.
Right.
So yeah.
Both our parents on either side did not go to the UK for a good time. They came to work. Well, at that time, the UK government, post-World War, needed more labor. And there were certain jobs that the white people weren't willing to do or couldn't do.
Thatcher?
So, just before that, although Thatcher came into power by the time I was born, yeah. But, so they had to turn to the Commonwealth nations that they owned in the Caribbean, like, hey, you can come over. We'll train you to take on these jobs. You'll get a little bit more money or whatever else. And my mother and father were among, I think my mom was among the latter ones. My dad was among the first to head over there.
Indians too, right? Are part of that Windrush? Can't remember.
No.
Okay.
No.
Windrush was almost exclusively Caribbean.
Black.
Mostly Caribbean.
Yeah.
Black Caribbean, yes.
But, you know, my dad mentions enough, like, you know, going to London, not being able, like, he says this all the time, like, the Jewish landlords refused to rent to darkies, you know, having to live in a flat in Finsbury Park with 2 or 3 other men. No, and back then there were no bathtubs in the UK. Like, believe it or not, like there was no, a lot of the things that you have now, like bath and like all that stuff, didn't exist back then. Like
everything was shower stalls.
Everything was shower stalls, or you had to go to the public baths. Like there usually would be a couple, like within the town or the section of London that you in to take a shower, or whatever. Like, and obviously, given the cold and whatever else, that was something that my dad and mom had to get accustomed to, you know. So, but it wasn't for a vacation; it was for better opportunity, and so the idea that this prime minister was like, "Oh, people," it should be insulting because it kind of plays into that Trinidad stereotype of we like to party. That's all we think about is just we travel, we have fun, and like we have no cares in the world. That being said, you can kind of see where that might come from in terms of the infrastructure that is on the island. Like Black Trinidadians are not necessarily, and that's something that my mom has mentioned to me. Black Trinidadians are not necessarily owning the infrastructure.
Bingo.
If anything, it's the Chinese and the Indians, which she was
Eastern
kind of like that has changed since she left. So even within that, there's somewhat of racism, I would argue, and somewhat classism as well.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because, you know, it's mostly the Chinese and the Indians who are owning a lot of the infrastructure there.
And the businesses.
Yay,
and
capitalism.
And then meanwhile, the Black Trinidadians who have been there, who developed Sound familiar, fam?
Mm-hmm.
Like, developed the island from slaves, own nothing.
Yep.
And having to come here.
It's I know this from my story is somewhat similar. My mother and my father, they used to live across the street from each other when they were kids, so they've known each other their entire lives. And my father was a laborer, and then he eventually became a licensed steam fitter and a licensed pipe fitter. My mother was in nursing school, which is a typical Trini thing to do. You're either some sort of manual labor with your hands, or you're a nurse, or you're a doctor. So, and I've got a few of them in my family, of course. But yeah, that's what happened. And my mother and father left Trinidad in 1969. They got married in London, of all places, in 1974, and I was born in England in 1976. So the whole Windrush generation of Caribbean individuals that were either put on a boat or on an airplane and sent to England for either educational opportunities or work opportunities is a direct result of not only centuries of enslavement of Africans by British colonial powers, but eventually the lingering insidious remnants of enslavement and colonialism that impoverished these islands to a point where the residents of these islands were forced to go back to the United Kingdom in order to receive any sort of educational or employment opportunities. And like you said, Collin, I was in Trinidad 3 times last year. And every time I was there, I was wondering, why are there so many potholes in the street?
Mhm.
Why does Richmond Street flood up past my ankles every time the rains fall? What's going on here? Why is there a trash plant on the Winston Churchill Highway, and when you leave the airport on your way to Port of Spain, Trinidad? Why? That country has so many opportunities and has so much land. And Nigel is correct. Trinidad should be way more than just Pelori, doubles, and steel pan. Let me say it one more time. Trinidad should be way more than just doubles, steel pan, and Pelori. Way more. There should be a thriving poultry industry, a thriving beef industry. There should be so many industries in that country, and we're just we're fucking up.
Right. And it's the idea of like, and I'm going to sound like my father. There should be a lot more science-based infrastructure there, engineering, given the
Absolutely
oil industry there.
Yep.
Like, and the thing is, it's like a lot of Trinidadians will come to the States to go to school.
Sure.
Or even in certain cases, maybe go to Cuba, funny enough.
Yes.
Like a lot, and that's something that people in the chat may not know. So don't knock Cuba, because a lot of Caribbean people, because Cuba has one of the top education systems in the world. You may not, mainstream media is not going to tell you that, but more often than not, like I know people who have either gone to Cuba at some point for their education or ended up getting their full degrees there.
Especially in medicine.
In medicine. But the thing is, it's that their homes are not designed for them to return home to. So they will end up in the UK, they will end up in the States, or they'll end up in other places in Europe or even Latin America, because the jobs aren't there in their homes.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll tell you another place, and again, this is just my travels because of what I've experienced. I'll tell you a place in Europe that has a growing Trinidadian population. There's actually really 2 places, but the one that I was at most recently, Berlin, Germany.
Really?
Berlin has a growing Trini population. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a growing, not only a Caribbean population there, but a Trini population there, of course. Another city that has a somewhat growing Trini population is Amsterdam. But then again, Amsterdam, the Caribbean was colonized mostly by
Dutch.
the British, but then the Dutch got their piece also, of course.
Yeah, Suriname as well with them.
And
yeah,
and Trinis are kind of everywhere. I remember I played a show in Stockholm, Sweden years ago, and I was hanging out at the bar one night, and there was a DJ playing calypso and soca, and I was like, wait a minute. I turn around and I'm like, this man's playing Chutney Bacchanal by Chris Garcia. What is going on here? Big tall dude with like this one dread going down the back of his head. And I'm like, where are you from? He goes, I'm from Port of Spain, Trinidad. I'm like, what? You're from Trinidad? What you doing here? He's like, I just moved here. I got tired of living in the country. I decided to pursue a career in music, and I play music, and I do my thing here. Stockholm, Sweden, of all places. I'm like, okay, wow.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, another place that has a large Trinidadian population is England, because it's England.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily in, for example, northern parts like Manchester or Leeds. You're going to find that mostly in and around the London metropolitan area, maybe going a little bit further south to Brighton.
Although I would argue now that's probably changing somewhat because London's gotten so expensive.
London is supremely expensive.
Like,
oh my God.
One of my oldest friends who I've known basically as from kids grew up in the same neighborhood in East London, Stratford. You know where it is.
Under Stratford, of course.
Like they grew up in Canning Town, and Canning Town back in the 80s is a whole different ball game from what it looks like now.
Yep.
So developed. They can't afford to live there anymore. They're talking about having to move out to Kent, which is in the east.
Yeah.
Which is sad because they have lived there their whole lives and cannot afford to even live in the neighborhood, and even with their children in the neighborhood that they grew up in.
Yep.
They have to end up probably moving at some point.
Yep. And we're seeing this sort of gentrification that we've seen is not only limited to just London. Collin, you're in Washington, D.C. Look how much of D.C. has been gentrified to the point where people now are having to move out of Washington, D.C. and move to Suitland, Maryland, or Seat Pleasant, Maryland, or Largo, or Suitland, or Upper Marlboro, or Oxon
Not even
Hill.
that, like Woodbridge, Virginia, or even further south. Like, and a lot of those people are like, a lot of those people are my friends who make money.
Yep.
And even they are like, and many of them are couples, and they're like, we cannot afford to live in DC. We have to live like close to an hour out by car down 95 in order to find a more affordable place. And so for me as a single person who lives here, it's just kind of like, and I'm kind of right now been thinking, like looking into the market to buy. And I'm like, if you can't afford shit, and many of you like are in a couple situation, what hope is there for me as a single person?
Yep.
To try and secure a place. And I refuse in a way to live out, not to say I wouldn't, but I refuse to live on the outskirts of DC. Like, Black people built this city.
Sure did.
I have every right to live in a city that Black people helped to develop.
Correct.
And the fact that I cannot even live, and I make decent money, like, is ridiculous to me. But I think that kind of goes into, like, overall just a capitalism which is obvious, but in Trinidad, but I think also this is kind of a cautionary tale for Venezuela as well.
Sure is.
That's why I think it's important to kind of talk about in terms of Trinidad, because if people think that aligning with the US is a good thing, as so many of my people are talking about, even though they may agree with the method of how this is going about, it's like, where the hell have you been over the last 20 years? Like, have you really literally put your head in the sand and just kind of been bland to the regime change that both parties have made in the global South and in the Middle East? And you think, somehow you think that Venezuela is going to be different? Like, what you're seeing in Trinidad, if Venezuela is not careful, is going to happen over there.
Yep.
And so I think in terms of, look, you don't have to agree with Maduro in terms of his leadership or whatever, but I understood what he was trying to do in terms of trying to make his country. And again, no one talks about the sanctions that were in the country that prevented him to do what he probably would have wanted to do.
Yeah.
In terms of truly liberating his people and trying to get everything more in terms of ownership, what they're doing in country in Mali and Burkina Faso, especially right now. So, and that's what the West is afraid of. They're afraid of people of color actually doing shit for themselves without them.
Wait,
because that affects their power.
I know Alan McLeod had a whole list of like stuff that's gone underreported from like Venezuela of like their actual accomplishments, even through those sanctions since like Chavez.
Right.
You know, and it's like they don't tell you about that. They just tell you, you know, communist fucking dictator or whatever. And Palantir celebrates it, going, that's what Palantir is for. We're here to kill the communists. The fucking 80s all over again. What the fuck are we doing? Like,
it's funny how, I mean, if I said this, I think to you maybe yesterday, if not the other day, it's funny how whenever leaders in the global south basically is just like F you to the West, they're labeled terrorist, communist, drug dealer, dictator, like Nelson Mandela, labeled on the terrorist list for wanting to end apartheid. Like,
same
are we
playbook
not looking
every
at,
time.
Right. Right. So anytime you hear, and this is what you should be doing, fam. Anytime you're hearing Maduro, actually, for your friends, like whenever you hear, "Oh, I don't like Maduro. He's a dictator." Okay, where did you hear that from? What is the basis of that opinion? Tell me. Ask people. I'll promise you, they wouldn't be able to tell you. It's just more the idea of this is what people are propagandized to believe because they want to have that manufactured consent for some. The idea that people are like justifying Trump for what he did, as illegal as it is, should be a red flag to everybody. And it's just the dissonance. It's just kind of wild to me in terms of, oh, well, I don't like Trump, but I agree what he did in this case. Which, if it made sense, sure, I can give you that. But as I said, do you really think that Trump is going to help brown people in the global South for liberation? Come on, fam.
Call me like extra cynical and suspicious. I think 90% of that is bots. Honestly, if not more. True. You know, I mean, you've got Caitlin Johnstone here. Listen to Venezuelans. No, not the Venezuelans in the street demanding Maduro's return. No, not the polls saying most people in Venezuela oppose regime change. Those are the wrong ones. Don't listen to those. Listen to the ones in Miami. Those Guisanos at South Beach. We know who you are. I know you. I've been there. I know what you're talking about. Like, you know, y'all's daddy's rum slave business got taken by, you know, like revolutionary Cubans, and now you hate it. Right, exactly. Anyway,
right.
It's just nonsense.
I said this on Twitter, and I think I got some pushback on this. I said, if you're a Venezuelan, quote unquote, and you're kind of saying Maduro's a dictator or whatever else, I have to look at you with a side eye.
Yeah, this is the Venezuelans doing that. This guy, that's the Venezuela. Like just the whitest complexion possible. Or ones with an FBI jacket, one of the two. You know?
Now, to be fair, like Latinos are not a monolith. They're not all going to think the same way. So I'm going to give people grace there. but again, it's the idea of like, when you're saying stuff and you're just saying it just because you might heard it on mainstream media without giving any examples or any substantive response as to why you think that way. Well, first of all, ask. But I think that also kind of shows the laziness that people have in terms of, especially in geopolitics. I think we're so conditioned to absorb what we're told and not question it. And we should be questioning everything. Like, how is it that all of a sudden, like, we're hearing Maduro is a dictator without any pushback necessarily? How is it that all of a sudden we're seeing online all these so-called parades of people who are excited that Maduro is out of there? And you and Joe, you probably can recognize this too, because you traveled more extensively than me. You can look at these cities and you can kind of tell, like, that doesn't look like, and I've never been to Venezuela, but I've been to Colombia like last April. So I would argue it's somewhat similar in look.
Yep.
Like, I could look at these pictures and the visuals, I'm like, hell no, that is not in Venezuela.
Yep.
Like, you know, I just have that sense in knowing what cities look like generally that I'm kind of like,
yep,
that seems off to me. Something doesn't
feel right.
It doesn't feel right.
Yep. I can tell an Eastern European city from a Central European city or a Western European city.
Yeah.
Just by looking at the
architecture and
the streets, the cars that are
the
cars are another dead giveaway, right? If you're seeing a Mercedes 500 Benz driving down the streets of Caracas, Venezuela, that is probably not in Caracas, Venezuela.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
It's
Fee posted this. The fact that Western propaganda has to use bot farms, bad fake profiles, and AI deepfakes all add as well, like, says it all. 98% of these people are bots. Right, I was following this live right when it was happening. Suddenly, 620,000 posts all calling for the liberation of Venezuela. You know, like, this is manipulation. This is media manipulation. They've given up on mainstream media manipulation. They know you motherfuckers don't listen to that.
Right. But you know what? But you know what though? With AI, it's going to be a lot harder now.
Way worse.
Because certain AI you can kind of look at it and be like, absolutely. But some of it can be so convincing that it's going to, and that's the danger, and that's why people like, that's why the powers that be want to invest in it.
And God forbid any of you independent journalists out there who should know better, like, you're sitting there and you're immediately reposting these things without double checking, making sure, like, or waiting to see if it's actual truthful information. Because, God forbid we wait a little bit to not be the first person to put something out, Like, it's better to be first than right in this industry, and it's stupid.
Right.
But
I think it's definitely more cause for us to be especially critical of what we're seeing and hearing in media, because it's gotten so easy and so much more convincing. Like, and that's the thing, like, it's evolving quickly. Like, in terms of Iraq, I remember in Iraq, people just kind of went along with it because, social media wasn't a thing then. All we had was mainstream media to kind of tell us, and I think now with social media, people are more wised up to the bullshit now. The powers that be are like, okay, we have to think of something else in order to brainwash the masses to control them.
So
So
I have
AI
this-
is now becoming a thing.
I have this from Camilla Press over at Casachun News. Imperialists bank on predictably reckless mishandling of information through the press and social media. They sprinkle around tidbits to fuel wild speculation with aims of sowing division and confusion within the country and internationally. Online personalities run with betrayal and blame speculation and successfully move discussion away from condemnation and action against the original U.S. terror. In their assessment, the blame is within Venezuela and among international allies. They shield imperialism, fixating over what cannot be verified rather than what is, and that which can be verified is part of the enemy's information operation. We've lived this playbook repeatedly. U.S. terror is verifiable and requires a response. And shout out all these people to go follow on specifically Latin American stuff. Casachun News, Camilla does incredible work. Mission of Verdad, William Serafino, Queralice, G. Borges Revilla, Fiorella Isabel, Camilla Press, Venezuelan Analysis. So yeah, Jose Big Morgy, bunch of people out there to go follow. So, but anything else to add, boys? I think we're about ran through everything. So
Yeah, I think there's one more story that you want to cover, Joe, if you got a few minutes.
Yeah, of course.
And then we'll let you go for the evening. But this story, I think this is just not a throwaway.
Yes, it will be difficult.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think you definitely have to give context to this. So this is the vendor with the parking
coconut vendor. That one.
Yeah. With the,
so
yeah. So if you don't, so actually let's watch this. So this is in Trinidad. So a coconut vendor, I think this would be in US dollars, the equivalent of around 21, 22.
Oh no, it's probably way more than that. No,
Way more than that?
No, 19,000 TT.
Yeah.
If you're getting it through the bank, that's about $2,700, maybe $2,800.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So
yeah.
So he gets that fine, traffic fine. So we'll watch this clip. Is about just under 2 minutes, and then you have to explain, because I'm just kind of like, this is just wild to me. Like, you got to explain this a little bit more. So go ahead, play the clip.
Yes, it will be difficult because I cannot bring in my van to bring in the goods. So I will have to buy the goods from other vendor, from those vans and them that they sell the coconuts wholesale. So it will be costing me more. So I would have to increase my price by $1 or $2, so it can accommodate for the purchase.
What do you make like in a month?
In a month, like you could say, like I might make like $10,000 in a month. But that still would not be enough to pay this amount of tickets. So, and I don't know how am I going to get more time, because they tell me I only have 1 month to pay it. Or, the tickets goes up by $250 every month. So then if these fines goes up by $250 additional now, how am I to survive? So I'm working for the TTPS. I have no future here. All my earnings shall be going to the TTPS. Look, yesterday was my birthday. I told them that it was my birthday. They had shown no mercy towards me. So, which means the TTPS cares nothing about public servants.
There's his CVS receipt. Like,
so explain this, please, if at all possible. Like, how is this possible?
I don't know how this vendor got specifically a $19,000 fine. It might have been just various violations because of his business. Maybe did not have the right permits. Maybe he wasn't disposing of the coconut shells properly, and it just added up all of these fines. But we're seeing a proliferation of fines increasing by double and triple in Trinidad and Tobago, because Trinidad, as we've talked about earlier, is operating at a deficit.
Right.
So
that's
It's a problem. So,
Yeah.
for example, passport applications. Passport application prices doubled yesterday from
Right.
250 Trinidad and Tobago dollars to $500. Speeding tickets. Now, this is Trinidad and Tobago dollars, not American, but still, it's money. Speeding tickets. There was a guy who got a speeding ticket the other day. He was doing 30 kilometers over the speed limit and received a $5,800 fine. Now, bear in mind, 30 kilometers is about 16 miles over the speed limit. So let me do a quick little math here. 5,800 Trinidad and Tobago dollars is equivalent to 854 American dollars. There's nowhere in America where if you go 16 miles an hour over the speed limit where you are going to get an $854 ticket. True story. 2 years ago, I was 11 miles an hour over the speed limit in a school zone. And yeah, I got pulled over. My ticket was $428. And that was in a school zone where prices are through the roof. This guy wasn't in a school zone. He was just minding his business. He was on the highway. He got pulled over and got hit with a $5,800 ticket. And on top of that, I know KPB recently had a tweet where she's not only increasing the fines but limiting the amount of time you have to pay the fine, and or if you have, for example, if you have a vehicle issue, for example, low tread on the tires, and the cops pull you over and say, oh, yo, you got low tread on the tires, you have 3 days to replace your tires. You don't replace the tires, then the fines go up and you could potentially face jail time. So what we're seeing now is in Trinidad, if you make it's corruption, number one, but more importantly, when you don't give people an opportunity for self-determination and self-realization through, to use a French phrase, a raison d'etre, a reason for being, when you don't give people an opportunity to work, when you don't give people, listen to what this brother said here. He said, how am I going to make these wages? What am I going to do? There's no opportunity for me here. So when you take opportunities away from people, when you take the people's livelihoods away from them, when people end up working just to pay bills, and you don't give them anything in return, you don't give them health care, you don't give them an opportunity for an education, you don't give them an opportunity to save up money to buy a home, what are you left with? You're left with a country that eventually has migration to other places. You're left with a country that suffers what's called, and we understand this because our parents did this, you end up with what's called a brain drain. When your best and brightest go to other countries so they can become the best they can be because their country, their homeland, will not allow them to.
Right. And so often we don't talk about the root in terms of, and this is why I say and especially with like the MAGA types who are basically like, get the immigrants out of here, or even among our own are like, get these Black immigrants out of here. And it's like, why do you think that people are coming over to begin with? Most people will never, look, I didn't want to leave the UK. I had to out of
your parents.
Parents, abuse, all that. Like, I won't go into it now, but like, I didn't want to, like, most of my immediate family lives there. I didn't want to leave. But at the time, and I remember being 11 years old, I felt it was literally a matter of life or death. If I felt if I stayed for different reasons, I would have died over there. But that's another story for another day. You know, like, it takes someone very desperate to be willing to uproot their lives from their home country to come to another, especially if they're knowing that it's going to be hostile to them. So we have to keep that in mind for the immigrants that are coming here. But we have to ask, what are the conditions that have caused their home countries to be so desolate that they're willing to come over here? And more often than not, we're seeing this in Trinidad, the complicity in being in the in crowd, so to speak, of the Western Empire that in of itself is shit, that is causing shit in their own countries, to which people are moving here and taking their jobs because they feel like I have to make something of myself, especially if they're leaving family behind. It's like, I have to make money to be able to send it home. That's
but it's in
still
those
a
barrels
thing.
home, dude.
Sure is.
Right. And then the people here get mad because then they're like, oh, you're taking our jobs. So it's a vicious cycle.
Yep.
Instead of talking about what are the conditions that are forcing people to leave, but more importantly, how are these corporations and donor class are influencing all of this that are causing people to live in strife like this.
Agreed. Agreed. And it's the same situation when not only people on the right, but people on the left in America talk about a migrant crisis coming from South America and Central America. Well, Reef, you had the graphic of all the countries that the United States has engaged coups in. Maybe if the United States left people alone, these countries would be prosperous, and they wouldn't necessarily, they wouldn't consider going to the country that once ruined their economy to look for a livelihood or look for hope or look for a job or look for education. So it's not even, it used to be just certain parts of the narrative were factually incorrect. We've now gone from factually incorrect to factually incomplete, which might actually be worse. Because if you're being lied to, then you can at least find some semblance of the truth out of the lie. But if you're not even being told all the facts, then what are you supposed to believe? What are you supposed to believe? And when it comes to Trinidad, all we've seen, especially from the government with respect to Venezuela, is lies. That's all we've seen is lies. And now with these fines, with these expensive fines and as a form of punishment,
right?
The prime minister looked at the citizens and said, "Behave yourself."
Behave yourself.
Anytime a country makes the people, the citizens, villains, then punishment becomes the policy. Punishment becomes the policy. And anytime you engage in punishment rather than governance or on a more esoteric level, leadership, then you have failed not only as a leader, but you have failed as a political system. Because if your political system is unwilling to face scrutiny and criticism, then, and when you have individuals from a country that want to criticize a country but are unable to for fear of an imperialist power taking away certain rights and privileges that are deemed to be valuable but aren't, then the lack of patriotism becomes more apparent. And then if you don't have any sort of patriotism or any sort of affinity to your country, and then you are forced to leave your country because your country doesn't provide for you. Because remember, it was John F. Kennedy that once said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. But when you don't give people an opportunity to do things in their country, where are they supposed to go? And given what we've seen over this past weekend, when President Donald Trump can kidnap and hostage a leader of another country, what's stopping another superpower from doing the same thing? What's stopping Putin from doing that, from flying to Kiev in the Ukraine and snatching up Zelensky? What's stopping Keir Starmer from flying to Port of Spain, Trinidad, or Bridgetown, Barbados, or Kingston, Jamaica, and potentially recolonizing the Caribbean? What's stopping that from happening? The gloves are off. There are no more guardrails. There is no third rail. There are no more boundaries, especially what we've seen over this past few days. And I don't know, the only option that the working class of not just America, not just Canada, not just England, not just the not just Trinidad and Tobago, not just Venezuela or Colombia or the Sahel region, but the workers of the world, the only option we have right now is engaging in labor disputes, engaging in industrial action, strikes. It's the only mechanism that we have left. We have to shut the means of production down around the world. Collin, earlier tonight, you talked about the NBA strike during the lockout. That specifically, that was called a wildcat strike.
Right.
And a wildcat strike happens when the
It's a legal strike.
It's a perfectly legal mechanism. It's when the labor of a particular organization goes against or chooses to not inform labor leadership of their work stoppage.
Right.
That is what the workers in this instance were NBA players, and they chose to not tell their labor leader, a lady named Michelle Thomas, I think her name is, that they weren't going to work. And they said, okay, fine, cool, that's great, go for it. We have to shut down the means to production. We have to shut down this hyper-capitalist, rapacious machine that is the American working class. We have to shut down the corporatist class of this country. We have to shut it down. And the only way we shut it down is withholding our work, our labor, because that's all we have left. We, as I said years ago in an interview on the War Room, my God, imagine that. I said, this is past politics. We are not going to vote our way out of this. And regardless of if the Democrats win the midterms in 2026, or if the midterms even happen in 2026, which is a distinct possibility. And I wish it wasn't funny, but it's entirely possible.
I'm laughing nervously because that is a possibility. And I think people are, like assuming, we're going to vote this motherfucker out.
Yep.
And I'm like, given what we've been seeing within the last year, do you really think that even if, unless if it's like clearly a wild and away, like absolutely, positively, absolutely no way. But again, we don't have fair elections in this country anyway. So like the chance of it being rigged or like screwed up to the benefit of Trump could just happen just due to the system that we have.
When you look at Palestine Action, that kind of thing, throwing your body on the gears of the machine, that also is useful. Not that I would, legally you can't, try to stay in the legal grounds. But Collin knows I'm more than appreciative of French vegetable cutting like technology. So, we could always go that route too. But what do I know?
Guys, I was hoping we would have time to talk about that preacher that said that God wanted to give Venezuela the oil.
Oh God!
But you know what?
Yeah, I saw him.
You know what? Here's the thing with that. I think we'll have to probably end with it pretty soon. But I'll just end with this.
Yep.
As a person who, and Reef knows this, spent a significant amount of my life in the church.
Yep.
And again, I have to give a shout out to my family in Uganda. When I first lived there in 2011 for 5 months and then went back on several visits. The most recent visit was in 2019. I was able to see a lot of the bullshit that a lot of these missionaries / Christians do in the name of faith.
Bingo. Let's talk about it.
To even there, the exploitation of locals in the global south, and they use God as their shield.
You could outlaw religion and most of these sex crimes would disappear in a couple of generations.
And it's funny because I was at home and my mom is upset because I don't go to church anymore. I don't talk church with her anymore. But and it's like,
Sorry,
Mom, I get it, but
like,
you know. But to tell her what I'm saying to you guys, I don't think she's going to have the mindset to fully understand the implications of how I felt. So I'm not.
You can't handle the truth.
Essentially, yeah. So I'm not going to go into it with her. But I will say to my audience, because you guys, I think, have the awareness of it.
What happened?
What happened?
Bear?
Where did he go?
I don't know. It got cut out.
Oh.
What did he do?
Whoa.
He broke it. They shut him down. He'll probably reconnect in a second. But
yeah, let me kind of speak to what he was talking about, because most of the listeners may not know this and just think, oh, he's just a DJ. Well, I also have 2 master's degrees. One of my master's degrees is in nonprofit management from the University of Baltimore. And years ago, as one of my classes, I had to watch a documentary called Poverty Inc. And Poverty Inc. talks about the nonprofit industrial complex as a form of exploitation. And what we've seen since the United States has decided to shut down U.S. aid has nothing to do with humanitarian intervention. It's all about engaging in soft power in impoverished areas. But kind of getting to the point with regards to that priest that talked about saying that God wanted America to have the oil. Collin, much like you, I also grew up in the church. I went to Catholic schools from kindergarten all the way through high school. I've slowly begun to divorce myself from the institutionalization and the institution of the Catholic Church and the confinement of religion as a whole. Because what that guy was saying, guy was talking about is that's what happens when you marry religion with racism. When you marry religion with racism, you get something worse than an indoctrination. You get brainwashed. You get badly brainwashed. And that guy, that preacher that we saw that on that I sent you on that TRT Instagram post, that is what happens. Those are the types of Christians that Donald Trump wants to protect.
That's the Christians that meet with Netanyahu in Florida. Same Christians.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. He's not interested in Christians in Nigeria. Then you add what that guy said to the greatest tool of white supremacy in human history. The greatest tool of white supremacy in human history is not the enslavement of Africans. No, it's a white Jesus.
Right.
Let me say that again. Listeners, pay attention. The greatest tool of white supremacy is a white Jesus. Why? Because, Collin, you've been in church before. Scripture tells us that God is the Father, God is the Son, and God is the Holy Spirit. Who is the Son of God? Jesus. What is Jesus depicted as? A white guy with straight hair. Okay? Now, the Bible also says that we, human beings, are made in his image. Okay? That's what the Bible says. We are made in his image. So if we are not made in his image, like 2 of the 3 panelists on tonight's show, then who are, Collin, what are you and I? We must be inferior because we're not made in his image. How could we ever measure up spiritually or religiously if we do not look like his image? And his image is obviously of a white person. So
meanwhile, where was Jesus born? So, where is he from?
Well, the Middle East. So at minimum, he was a person of color.
Correct.
So if we go ahead and talk about, so if we tell people that they're religiously inferior or spiritually inferior, guess what else you can do with those individuals? You can dehumanize them because they're not equal. And then guess what happens? You then end up with the enslavement of Africans. You then end up with the 3/5 compromise in the United States, where Black people were not even considered human beings, but 3/5 of a human being. You end up with redlining. You end up with blockbusting. You end up with the rate with occupational segregation. You
end up with sanctions.
Correct. You end up with medical apartheid. You end up with with the school to prison pipeline. You end up with food deserts. You end up with George Floyd. You end up with Philando Castile. You end up with Amir Locke. You end up with Rashard Brooks. You end up with Dante Wright. You end up with Jamel Clark. You end up with Freddie Gray. You end up with Jonathan Price. You end up with Daniel Prude. This is what happens. And again, when you can easily dehumanize somebody and you justify it in the name of God, then who are we to judge? Right? Because scripture says that we're not supposed to be judging God, because God is non-judgmental. But if God is non-judgmental, then he tells us that we're supposed to be made in his image, but we don't look like him. There's a psychological disconnect within the Black community, especially with Black Christianity, that has lasted for generations, and people of our age are moving away from it, while people of our parents' age still go to church on Sunday.
Crazy. Well, as your local white atheist, plenty of conversations can be had about it. I hate to tell y'all, but that whole thing was manipulation from the jump. So from way back, from all the way back. So
it's painful to see this level of brainwashing happen.
Yeah,
but it's even worse when you have a preacher that justifies the extraction of heavy crude oil for the salvation of white evangelical Christians.
We talked about like Huckabee and the Friends of Zion heading over to Israel, all these Israel's big propaganda campaign to the Christian faith here. It's all business. It's all propaganda nonsense, but luckily people are watching us. Yeah. Like
allegedly.
So. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Well,
now, granted, I believe in God. I do. I believe there's some sort of higher power. But as I get older and as I see the world for what it is, and I see who's doing what, where, the institution of religion is becoming more and more repugnant. And the same people who preach like that guy that I sent you that video from TRT World, they go in these mega churches and they hand out WWJD bracelets.
Yep. Right.
Do you think Jesus would go ahead and support a genocide in the Middle East? Do you think Jesus would go ahead and support the theft of oil from another country? Do you think Jesus would support
He'd
genocide?
Flip those tables over, wouldn't he? Like,
do you think Jesus would support wars taking place around the world? Do you think Jesus would support any of these things? No. But because the evangelical Christian base in the United States is so rooted in imperialism and racism and hypercapitalism, there's no divorcing that from this country, which is why a little more than 3 hours ago, I said I want to get the fuck out of this country once my daughter gets old enough. I'm not coming back.
You ever read a book?
This bullshit here.
There's a book, I think it's titled The Myth of the Benevolent God. Interesting read. Talks about like free will and how it relates to like, that's the classic thing of like, we're not supposed to judge God, that kind of thing. It's, well, free will is the cause of all these problems. Well, that argument goes both ways. that higher power could totally not be a benevolent, like, higher power. Doesn't look like it from where I'm sitting, you know, if there is one, which I kind of find solace in knowing that it's all entropy. Makes it feel like it's not completely fucking us over, you know? But anyway, not to get too in the, like, theoretical weeds, you know? But closing statements, boys, make them quick.
Closing
you
statement.
know?
Well, I'll just end it this way. Joe.
Yeah.
You're just proving once again you need to come back more often.
Yeah, dude.
Thank you.
Yeah, quit making money on tour.
I do more
God.
of
No,
you know,
I mean, the audience, our family loves you.
Thank you. Love you guys. Thank you.
As evidenced in the chat tonight.
Yeah.
We appreciate you
No,
for, I mean, again, the timing I think was perfect.
Yeah.
Worked out.
In terms of what you've wanted to say, and at least when you were speaking to me, but I think just given what's happening in the world, but I think we appreciate definitely your groundedness in terms of you've seen a lot, but you've been able to, I think, kind of filter that in a way, in a worldly lens, especially given your music that, you know, again, and we just have to thank you here. Like, you've given us your music to play.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Every week that our audience loves, by the way.
I appreciate it.
You know, so we hear you every week. So you've definitely been a big part of this show as well as the network. And to me personally, as a brother and friend. So I think
Likewise.
on behalf of us in the network, as we keep saying, whenever you have time to stop through, you always have an open invitation.
Yeah, dude.
And where can people find you? In case they didn't know, in case for the new ones who are still here.
Well, Collin, first of all, thank you. I appreciate you, brother. I mean, it's deeper than just friends that chat on. There's an obvious kinship and brotherhood given our backgrounds and just the familiarity and everything else. And just so you remember, the first time we met was a little more than 5 years ago.
To the day.
Almost to the day. Yeah. At the Medicare for All marches, right at that park, right behind.
Like, people are like, "What do you do? What do you do, bitch?" As you said, we've been on these streets. We just wised up. We just wised up, and we're not being a part of that unless if it's the real deal.
It's the real deal. Yeah.
You know, like, we don't have time for that. We have things that we need to take care of in our personal lives and all that. But we were out there, and we would be there.
I mean,
with the right conditions.
I mean, we were there on January 3rd and January 4th of that year.
Like, have no plan or moving forward, and I'm not doing that anymore. No time for that.
Yeah. We were there January 3rd and January 4th at that park, which was crazy. And there wasn't a single inkling from anybody there that January 6th was going to happen.
I did.
Okay.
Only because I was the one who worked on the permits here.
Oh, that's right.
And
that's right. Yes.
And I had issues with.
So January 6th is Collin's fault. I'll make sure to inform everyone. You know, probably already on 9 lists, but
we almost didn't get the permits because the person was like, "Are you involved in anything?" Basically.
On the 6th, yeah.
And the thing is, I live in DC. Like, people knew something was going to happen. We didn't know to what degree.
Yeah.
You know. So obviously I said no. Long story short, we got the permits.
Yep.
But it was funny because you remember this, how the police gave a group of what? I'll say 100 at best. Like, the trouble that we got.
Collin, it wasn't 100. It wasn't even close to 100. It was
Okay,
probably more like 30.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was probably more like 30.
Sure.
And of those 30, a bunch of them had YouTube channels.
Right. But
It was probably 30
right.
people.
But
Yeah.
in my memory, like they gave us such a hard time.
Oh, yeah. I remember we were standing on the back steps of the second building in the back door of the 3 buildings that makes up the House of Representatives. I remember I was Nico House had a megaphone. He started talking. I'm standing next to Nico.
Right.
Pasta standing next to me. Fiorella standing next to Pasta.
Nico is on another
Next thing you know, I hear somebody say, "All right, call me from my backup. We're gonna get all these people off here." And I'm like, "What?" And next thing you know, 15 cops show up. I'm like, "There's 30 of us. We got signs, megaphones, sourdough bread, and hot cocoa." Because you remember somebody brought over some sourdough bread and hot cocoa that day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Where did all these cops come from? What the hell's going on here?"
So
it was nuts. And then a few months later, we linked up again because we were both part of the planning committee for the Medicare for All marches, not only nationwide, but the planning committee for the Washington, D.C. marches.
Right.
And I was, I was one of the guest speakers there. And I remember me and all the people part of the planning committee trying to get the permits for the march that we were doing.
Right.
We had to get permission from 6 different police organizations in Washington, D.C.
Right. So, but yeah.
Suspect
but then,
is a handsome, tall, bald black man.
6 different police organizations to march 1.5 miles.
Right.
Shit.
So, long story short, if I'm going to be a part of a protest, I'm doing, as you said, a wildcat one. Like no permits, just pitchforks, torches, whatever you need to bring, and just go. Like it shouldn't be. The idea that we have to plan to protest to me is ridiculous. And have it be approved by the powers that be, just to march around, just air your grievances and go home.
Right.
Like I'm not doing that anymore.
So
it's quite frankly unconstitutional because the First Amendment affords everybody 5 freedoms: freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom to protest and peaceably assemble, and freedom to petition your government for redress of grievances.
Well, I'll say
5
this,
freedoms
at
of the
this
First
point,
Amendment of the Constitution.
I
So the
can't
fact that we have to get
guarantee-
a permit in order to protest,
Right.
yikes.
I mean, at this point, it's like I can't guarantee I'm going to be peaceful.
Yeah. I mean, whatever.
I need to be peaceful simply because I've got a 15-year-old little girl and an adopted 10-year-old sister that need me around.
But before you go, where can people find you?
Yeah, dude.
Instagram, Facebook, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, Twitter, Facebook at Joe Nice DJ. Have a website, joenicedj.net. That's it. I mean,
All right.
I'm not hard to
And
find.
your links, because I know them very well by now, are all in the description. So, but just for people who don't read, at least you heard it from Joe.
Yep.
So, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Always a pleasure.
Always mine, brother.
Come
Thanks so
again.
much.
Don't wait so long, but safe travels.
Yeah.
To you.
Got a lot going on over the next few weeks and next few months, about.
But definitely guys go to his website and look up where he's playing, if he's playing in your city.
Buy some merch. I got some cool merch on the website. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
I need some new merch.
Well, I haven't really made anything new, but I'm gonna really start pushing the Money Series T-shirt soon in honor of Black History Month. Because right now I've got the Harriet Tubman 20, the Malcolm X 100, and the Martin Luther King 1. But I'm gonna go ahead and put the other Money Series T-shirts. It's the Sojourner Truth 5, actually the John Brown $2 bill shirt, the Sojourner Truth 5, it's the Frederick Douglass 10, and the Rosa Parks 50, all printed on the dollar bills that the United States manufactures. And there's an official name for those pieces of paper money. They're called Federal Reserve notes. So the actual paper money, Federal Reserve notes. So there's faces of those 7 people I just mentioned: Martin Luther King, John Brown, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X. And the reason why I put those 7 people on the Money Series T-shirts is because Black people built this country.
Right.
not the white hyper-capitalist warmongers and enslavers that are on our paper money. They do not deserve to be honored. And the reason why I put John Brown on the $2 bill is because if you look at a $2 bill, the face on a $2 bill is Thomas Jefferson, who is one of the worst Americans that America has ever produced. The polar opposite of Thomas Jefferson is John Brown. So that's why I put him on the $2 bill.
Nope. Cool. Go to his website, pick up some stuff. Also, donate to us, code-v.com/Idiots Network. Little QR code on your screen. Scan it. You'll know how this works by now. Otherwise, like and subscribe. Do all the engagement stuff you're told to do. And
one
remember,
other
kids,
thing, the
go ahead.
Bandcamp site, the Bandcamp is GourmetBeats Music.
Cool.
GourmetBeatsMusic.bandcamp.com.
We'll
a
add
whole
that.
lot of new releases recently, but I do have some stuff coming up.
Yes, sir.
Soon.
Cool.
Soon. I mean,
Well,
the
if
most
Mm.
that's
recent
it-
release was the one of Manuka Records with my friend LSN and Dreza, Liberation Dub, and the remix is the one you guys played. But there's more stuff coming. It just takes time
Yes,
to
sir.
make music that I really want to make.
Cool. Well,
Just make more of it.
Gonna do my best. Got a few things in the works.
if that's it, as always, kids, remember, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
Bye, guys. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Peace and be enslaved.
Yes?
So peace isn't the answer.
No?
Liberation is the answer.
Bye, have a great time.